Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show and happy Monday. It's Thanksgiving week. Can I tell you, it's kind of weird for me because we already celebrated Thanksgiving. We do it every year. We call it Fakesgiving because it's much easier to get my whole family together on a day other than the day. And so we did it. And so I kind of feel like everybody's just playing catch up at this point. Come on, let's get going. And actually, it had the added benefit of adding a bunch more days in between Thanksgiving and Christmas for me, which is kind of convenient shopping-wise, etc. In any event, I look forward to having the day off and to hearing about how all of you celebrate this Thursday. What's it going to be? Football? Delicious snacks that you don't eat for the rest of the year? I mean, I literally think it's the only day of the year I ever eat stuffing or cranberry sauce. What other day do you eat that? Do you guys eat that other than on Thanksgiving? Anyway, let me know. Megyn at MegynKelly.com. On this particular Monday before Thanksgiving, President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet is now complete. All that's left is the confirmation process. That ought to be fun. And even the Trump-hating media is admitting that this is the most ideologically diverse cabinet ever. One nominee is even getting praise from Randy Weingarten, which is not good. It's not good. We'll get into it. And also the Surgeon General is getting big praise from one of the COVID Nazis who is in total lockstep with Anthony Fauci. Also not good. There is a new poll from CBS News showing massive support for President-elect Trump from the American public right now. Wah, wah. That's going to upset the media. They're not going to like that. And they will do their level best to turn that around just as quickly as they can. Joining me today for the full show, it's Stu and Steez. Stu Burguiere, he is the host of Stu Does America for Blaze TV. And Stephen L. Miller is a contributing editor at The Spectator and host of the Versus Media podcast. He is also known as @RedSteez on X. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Looking for the perfect gift or maybe just a treat for yourself? Firecracker Farm Hot Salt is an awesome gift. Beautifully packaged and unlike anything else out there. It's so unique, right? And it's tasty and handcrafted. This is perfect for anyone who loves bold flavors. It's not your typical salt. Each stainless steel push grinder is packed with amazing flavor. It's available in heat levels from mild, that would be me, to wow, that could be you. So there's something for everyone. Every sprinkle brings out incredible flavor without overpowering your dish. Firecracker Farm Hot Salt is made with love by a small family business. Plus, a percentage of every sale goes to support charities Operation 300 and the Pipe Hitter Foundation. But here's the thing. Firecracker is a small operation, so they can only make so much at a time, especially during the holidays. There's always a chance that they're going to run out. So get it while you can. It's the perfect gift, but don't wait too long or you might miss out. Firecracker Farm Hot Salt. Handcrafted, flavorful, and unforgettable. Get yours today at firecrackerfarm.com. Guys, welcome back.
Thanks, Megyn. Good to see you.
I have stuffing 4 days a week.
Seriously, do you?
I don't know why you guys don't.
Do you ever, literally on any other day of the year, do you have stuffing?
Sure. It's great with chicken. You just get the stovetop stuff. I do this one from scratch, but yeah, why not?
You make it at home. Okay.
Yeah.
Never.
I think you're describing an American failure here, a cultural failure. We should be eating more stuffing, more cranberry sauce.
Yeah, we should be having Thanksgiving twice a week.
The
Brits have Sunday night roast dinner. I mean, we can steal that tradition from them.
Make America healthy again. A lot of green
beans. I don't know. And pumpkin pie. That's another thing. It's a one time a year. Am I wrong?
I don't eat pie.
Pumpkin pie has a season, I think. You get it's Thanksgiving to Christmas. I feel like I have it at Christmas sometimes too. But you're right.
I'm wrong. You're doing it wrong. You're only allowed to have pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving and cranberry sauce. Wait a minute, Steez, you're not having cranberry sauce on any day other than Thanksgiving, are you?
Sometimes. Yeah, it's great, turkey sandwiches and stuff like that. Yeah.
The kind, there's only one kind. It's the kind you get out of the can and you slice it with a knife and they fall over.
Yeah, I mean, my culture is not your, snack here. Okay. So no, you just get some cranberries, you throw some bourbon, some orange juice, some brown sugar into a thing and simmer it. And it's great. It lasts for 2 weeks.
Don't be the guy who's overstepping us and saying you make your own cranberry sauce.
I do.
Don't do that. Don't you dare.
Just like the Pilgrims did. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter. I was researching cranberry sauce recipe. I was just like looking at some stuff, and I came across a website that had a land acknowledgement in the blurb about cranberry sauce. It basically said, the cranberries were here when the colonizers came, and they came from Europeans, and to give to the natives whose land we are on to this day. And I'm like, ma'am, I don't need a land acknowledgement for cranberry sauce. Imagine sitting there at the table and someone says, "This is great cranberry sauce. Where did you buy? Did you make this?" Well, it's a long story. Please sit down because it goes back to our indigenous tribes
and abuse. It's funny because I have tried. My audience has heard these stories, but many times over the years to cook a Thanksgiving dinner, even though I don't cook, and every single time it's been an utter disaster, including a fire. When John O'Hurley of Seinfeld fame and his beautiful wife, Lisa, both of whom are dear friends of ours, were over. And we almost set our house on fire, which is when John O'Hurley yelled out, "I've got Jean Georges on speed dial," which is a fancy restaurant in New York. Anyway, now that I'm hosting like an extended family, I don't even try. Everybody knows. No one would come if they found out I was doing the cooking. So I hire a caterer. And I've done it different ways. I've gotten the food, at the grocery store in advance. But then I screwed that up. One year I left half of the groceries at the Whole Foods. So by the time we got to actual Thanksgiving dinner, I only had half of the stuff. It was a very paltry serving. Okay, but anyway, now this year I hired a caterer, second year in a row. And can I tell you what's great about it? If you get the caterer to do your Thanksgiving dinner like 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, everyone's available. They're cheap, relatively speaking. Everyone's ready to help because it's not Thanksgiving. It was so much easier.
You're gonna have to start checking the immigration status of some of those caterers now because they're just gone, according to the libs who think that we're just deporting housekeepers and crop pickers and food washers and everything like that. That's one of my favorite things that they just stumble into. So just make sure you have one that's legal. This year.
That's Abigail.
Mr. Trump isn't going to allow those next year. So just so we're all clear.
Okay. So anyway, that's Thanksgiving. We've got that covered. Now we might as well begin with the unfair attacks on our wonderful profession of journalism. Joe Scarborough this morning is outraged, and I do mean outraged, about people attacking the press as afactual and unimportant. He's had about enough of this, guys. Stu, take a listen to him speaking with Axios' Jim Vanderhei. Here's what happened. Vanderhei made some remarks at the National Press Club. I guess he got an award. And then he got up there and, performed a nice act on the press that were there. Like, you matter. And then Joe Scarborough did his best imitation of J-Lo with her same messaging in advance of the election 2024. You matter. You matter. Here he is. Listen.
Elon Musk sits on Twitter every day or X today saying like, we are the media. You are the media. My message to Elon Musk is bullshit. You're not the media. Like, being a reporter's hard, really hard. You have to care. You have to do the hard work. You have to get up every single day and say, I want to get to the closest approximation of the truth without any fear, without any favoritism. You don't do that by popping off on Twitter. You don't do that by having an opinion. You do it by doing the hard work.
Yeah, come on, slow clap, everyone. Whoa.
They're clapping. They're clapping on the set of Morning Joe. It's very hard, Stu Burguiere, to sit there as Joe Scarborough does each morning and say, best Biden ever, 2 months before we saw him implode on the debate stage.
He's sharp as a tack, and they nailed that coverage the entire time. In fact, they told us all the way up to the very end how sharp he was until the second they decided to turn on their journalism skills and create a new golden era of journalism that lasted approximately 2 weeks until Kamala Harris had the nomination. Because that's basically what happened. It's funny that for those 2 weeks, they really did do their jobs like that. Like, they actually were really impressive. They were able to suss out every single backroom rumor about, every single time Joe Biden had fallen down in the middle of some fundraiser. Every politician or celebrity that was there, they knew every little detail. They knew all of a sudden that he hadn't met with his cabinet in over a year. All this stuff they were able to suss out in a couple of weeks the second they believed it would help them and that he was now hurting them. And of course, then they went right back to praising Kamala and acting like she was wonderful the entire time. It's pathetic. And, it's funny because when he talks about, journalism is not just popping off on Twitter. First of all, they're all there. They're all doing that. I see them. I'm on Twitter and I see all these journalists there popping off all the time with their non-journalistic opinions. This entire election, to me, more than anything else, was an experiment to see if the mainstream media still had that power. Could they convince Americans that actually, no, the last 4 years were great? Actually, Bidenomics was working. Actually, the border wasn't that big of a deal. Actually, the Afghanistan thing went well, exactly how they planned it to go. Actually, he was as sharp as a tack. And what we found out was it doesn't work anymore. Yes, the media still has influence. Yes, it can still do things, but they are no longer capable of taking America by the collar and dragging it to the solution that they desire. That is something they are feeling real panic about. This has been their entire lives. To grow up, to be a journalist, to be able to take American opinion and form it to your every whim and desire, that is dead. And that's what Elon's talking about, and he's right.
It's no accident, Stephen, that you have Jen Psaki the night that Kamala lost saying we've got to take a real look at these social media influencers and the digital lane and think about regulating them because they played a major role in this election and it's wrong. And now you're having all these articles done about alternative places for news like podcasts and how dangerous this is. And then you have Vanda High, who is co-founded Axios, and Scarborough going off about how what MSNBC does matters. And here's a little bit more of Joe Scarborough doing that.
Continues to need to be said when all of the garbage that's flying around on social media, lying about reporters, lying about the hard work they do. Why this is so important right now, more than ever, is because critics of the press are feeling more empowered than ever to lie more than ever. What you do matters. What the New York Times does matters. What the Wall Street Journal does matters. What Jonathan Lemire does matters. What the Financial Times does matters. What NBC News and MSNBC reporters do matters. So you stir up shit, and you the more you can get people angry, the more followers you get, but also now it's monetized to help you lie.
The more you hate, the more you make.
Yeah, there you go. I like hey, Rev, did you preach for your next weekend?
That'll go viral.
Okay. Joy Reid was literally saying that if Trump won, they were going to start locking up brown people. So maybe spare me on the lectures of you stir people up and then make money. It's no accident that MSNBC's ratings are in the toilet. They're being spun off because reputationally, they're a nightmare for Comcast and NBC. These are the biggest losers at the party with their little pocket squares, and they've been spun off to go sit in the part with the non-alcohol punch. And they're still trying to tell us, Steve, that they're the main people at the party and they matter. There's no prom king without me.
Yeah, I mean, Morning Joe is just basically performing the news, and that's kind of their whole shtick. It's, they believe they exist in some kind of Aaron Sorkinized universe where they are the most important character of the entire media ecosphere, and they're just not anymore. And as someone who partakes in media criticism for a career for my podcast, I've said, these people have the least amount of influence I've ever seen in my life, and that's something that I kind of push out there to a lot of other influencers around the right like that. It's okay to admit that, these people upset you and they are professional performers. They are professional liars. But this election, like Stu said, was really a referendum on all of that stuff. What they're doing isn't working. And Jim Vanderheid's interesting. He was one of the guys who walked around post-election going to places like MSNBC, going to places like Politico, and just saying, it's really hard to find good journalists out there. It's a hard industry. And Jim Van of Axios has not hired anybody from, say, the Free Beacon, who broke the story of Claudine Gay's plagiarism. They should get a Pulitzer for that story, and they won't. So it's not that there aren't good reporters. It's that these guys are locked inside of their own, I hate to say the cliche, their own calcified bubble, where we can't go hire a good reporter from, say, the Free Beacon. We can't go hire a good reporter from the Daily Caller who will report on pro-life issues. They froze out half of the country. And now they're complaining that half the country's not listening to them. And as far as Twitter X is concerned, Harry Enton from CNN just had a poll where he showed that Twitter X, and X is the platform as it exists now, is as ideologically balanced as it ever has been. It's 48% left, 47% right-leaning, and they can't take that. They lost 20% of the conversation, and they all packed their bags and then went and colonized another social media platform like they always do. And so that's really what this is about. And so, Morning Joe sitting there pounding his fist on the table, it just does not resonate like this would have 2 years ago, because Joe Scarborough believed he had the ear of the White House. And he did. And this is what they have to show for it now.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the ear of anybody who is in the center or right of center anymore.
He's trying to worm. He's trying to worm his way back into Trump world. Everybody knows what that little play date at Mar-a-Lago was about. They see ratings with Trump. And so I predicted by the time this month is out, or by December is out, he's going to have Donald Trump calling his show again, and to get all the people at CNN, the Brian Stelters, and everyone talking about it and getting on their typewriters. And that's going to be the business model. And that's why you're seeing some of these traditional outlets decide, maybe we should talk to Hitler instead of just, calling him Hitler. And so it was
Trump
all
can't
a show.
Save him. Trump calling into
I would agree
Morning
with
Joe
that.
cannot save Morning. They've already exposed themselves, Stu, as just in the tank for the other side and full of loathing for the other side. And there is no one who is center right who's going to say, I'm going to give them a fresh look because Donald Trump sat down with them. Everyone in America, in the world, knows that Trump's oxygen is news coverage, and will understand if he goes on that show, it's because he loves to see himself talked about in the news. And if he can get these worms into giving him good coverage by giving them an interview every once in a while, he'll do that. But no one's going to think, I'll reevaluate them now that Trump sat with them for 15.
No, absolutely. In fact, I think if anything, it's the opposite. Like people will see through it, and their own audience, who is incentivized for them to be saying anything negative about Donald Trump, will hate them for it. I mean, it's a really strange move, honestly, for them to go talk to Donald Trump, because if anything, it provides their audience a reason to dislike them more, because if they see them as kissing up to Donald Trump, it's probably bad for them, right? There's no one who's on MSNBC looking for actual coverage of the news. That's not why you go to that place. Maybe some people go to CNN for that still. Nobody goes to MSNBC for that. And who's going to be incentivized by this? The person who says, you know what, wow, we really blew this and we missed something serious with the American people. Their social media following isn't going to, to praise them for that. Joy Reid is the type of person who gets rewarded out of a situation like this, because she will get more and more extreme. She'll double down. She'll say the reason we lost is because of racism and sexism and, transphobism or whatever other thing they're going to accuse people of. And their followers will praise them for it. And you know what? If they did try to have a real reckoning, their audience would push back on them, I think, enough so that someone else would step into that role and take over the cheerleader for whatever left-wing fantasy they want.
The nerve that they would try to distinguish, because you heard there Jim Vandehei saying, talking about the importance of a free press and slamming opinionated influencers who are popping off on Twitter. He's so angry about those who just pop off on Twitter. And then Scarborough, too, looking at them saying, we here at MSNBC, we matter. As if we should look at Russia, Rachel Maddow, and Joy Reid, who all she does is spew racist tropes. That's it. That's all she does is spew racism about Donald Trump. Not to mention the rest of their pathetic lineup. We should be looking at them as the credible ones. It's very irritating to them that there are people on X who have a platform and people in the digital lane like us that have a platform that others are listening to, because that's not factual, you see. And by the way, many of us are reporters, are journalists, and would put our credentials up against anyone up and down that lineup any day of the week. These same outlets, I'll just speak about the one, Axios, because it's Jim Vandehei up there, Steve. It was his outlet that was trying to say Kamala Harris was never the border czar. That is a title she never actually had. Quoting here from an article by Steph W. Knight, July 24th, 2024. You go back to April 14th, 2021, Axios. Kamala Harris was appointed by Biden as border czar. Then June 23rd, 2021, Kamala Harris was put in charge by Joe Biden of solving the migrant surge at the southern border. But as soon as she declares for president, she was never the border czar. And then when she got slammed online for this ridiculousness, they added an editor's note. This article has been updated and clarified to note that Axios was among the news outlets that incorrectly labeled Harris a border czar. And these are the people who want to lecture the rest of us.
Yeah, that was a pretty good example. And the other one, Stu brought up is we were told for months and months, even by Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi, how sharp Joe Biden was. They smeared Robert Hur when Hur described him as he did in her report, which seemed to be more generous as more stuff comes out. And even up to the fact where Joe Biden has to be pushed off the stage by Barack Obama, and Obama's own advisors said, well, that's not really what happened. They're just really good friends. I had an eyewitness account on my podcast who saw Biden at Normandy and just said, this guy's gone. His brain is applesauce. An eyewitness person said this. We were all called conspiracy theorists. We were called chief fake artists right up until the moment when they couldn't hide him anymore on the debate stage. And I thought what was interesting, Semaphore Media, run by Ben Smith, formerly of BuzzFeed, they went and they talked to the Pod Save America bros about what happened with Joe Biden. And I thought, how come you guys aren't reaching out to the people who have been saying this for the last 3 years? Where is the apology from the Semaphores, from the Axioses, from the MSNBCs? Like you said, Joe Scarborough saying this is the best Biden we've ever seen. And then 2 weeks later, like it never happened, he's like, he needs to get out. And they move on. And then they expect the rest of us to just not notice. And that was kind of how incensed I got with that whole thing. It's like there's some of us that Axios and the media might disagree with because we're on the political right, but we were right about Biden's condition, whatever it might be. It could be an affliction. It could just be old age. Whatever it is, we were right about this. And they will not reach out to anyone who is on the political right and say, hey, what do you think now that he's out and stuff like that? They still go and they talk to the pod bros who lie to their audience for a living on behalf of Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. And that has a lot to do with this. And like I said, you can have Vandehei walking around going, where are all the good reporters? And it's simply because they have an ideological stance that they will not break under any circumstances, including this last election, which was as much a referendum on their behavior and their industry than it was on anything else in this country.
God, you're so right. I'm just thinking about the examples. We were right about Kamala Harris being unable to resonate at all with anybody in this country other than the far left. Everybody predicted this. I mean, we were on the air every day talking about how inept she was and how she was too stupid to become the first female president. And I know you guys too, raising questions all along about whether Tim Walz was the answer to her Midwestern man problem.
I miss him.
As people who actually do understand the center right and men, I miss him too. But they should have listened. They should have said, people who actually surround themselves with guys like that are telling us this ain't gonna do it. Well, maybe we should listen. When we said the trans issue is getting very, very big and you ignore it at your own peril. Go ahead and go ahead and ask.
And
I like Ben Smith, but ask Ben Smith.
It.
He doesn't have your answers. With all due respect, he doesn't have your answers. It's a very good point. Stu, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, and it's totally true. And I think if you are relegated to pounding on the desk and saying what we do matters, it doesn't. I promise you, it doesn't. I mean, I think back to the high school years and asking girls to prom and then just, pounding my fist on the desk over and over again and saying, I am good looking and I am attractive and I am interesting and I do have abs. It doesn't work. People know it's not true. It doesn't work like that. People know if you're interesting. They know if what you're doing matters. And what the American people said in November to this whole question was, no, we don't believe you anymore. We've seen you lie to us way too many times. All the things you just mentioned and so many more, Megyn, people looked at with their own eyes, evaluated themselves as actually intelligent individuals and said, these people are lying to us. I don't trust them anymore. I'm looking to other sources. They found the truth in other places, and that is the punishment for all of this bad behavior over multiple decades that has only been getting worse and worse and worse and worse. I don't think there's a way back for them.
Now, on this front, there's news today, courtesy of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I guess has been appointed to head the congressional subcommittee that's supposed to help DOGE, Elon's and Vivek's, Department of Government Efficiency. They're supposed to work from the congressional angle on helping suggest cuts for DOGE. And she mentioned in an interview with Maria Bartiromo, NPR. NPR gets almost $100 million of taxpayer money a year, $91 million. That's crazy. Sohrab Armani was out on X yesterday calling attention to a segment he had just listened to where they were saying, women are not the only ones who get periods. Women, I don't wish to fund that. I don't wish to fund that message. It is not objective and it is not truthful. And our team put together some examples of our own on NPR's reporting that all of us are paying for. Watch.
He also doubled down on those comments he made recently, calling Democrats the enemy from within, and suggested using the military against them.
Latinos want to be white. They want to be with the cool kids.
President Biden's classified document troubles are piling up.
His lawyers announced they had found more files at his home in Wilmington, Delaware, and congressional Republicans pounced.
Well, it's not unusual for outgoing government officials to find classified documents laying around.
I've known several people who have retired, and after they retire, they're going through their box, and it's like, whoa, how did that get in here?
Republican Glenn Youngkin is a former private equity CEO who picked up Republican criticism of schools, often criticizing them for things the schools don't teach.
And it's worth noting here that critical race theory isn't actually in Virginia's K-12 curriculum.
Okay, so he's going to ban a thing that isn't happening. Is Terry McAuliffe, the Democrat, even bothering to respond to that? Or do people in Virginia get it? Like, this is not real.
Your taxpayer dollars hard at work, Stu.
Incredible. And, as somebody who's done radio for a long time, it's one of those things that people like doing radio. They actually like doing it. People like doing podcasts. People like doing shows on Sirius XM. It's something that people try to get into. We don't need to fund any radio station. People will go out and find their own information that they want. And the NPR is like, I can't even imagine going through that. It's coming up through commercial radio where you have to actually work hard to get people to listen to you. That's not what NPR is. They know that funding's there. They know that is there. And if they walk that left-wing line, the funding will continue and continue and continue. This is the exact thing. This is the thing I'm probably most optimistic about when it comes to an incoming Trump administration, looking for stuff like this. There's no reason we should be spending $100 million propping up a crappy radio station that's just going to spout left-wing lies. Even if it was spouting conservative lies or conservative truths, it still would make no sense for the federal government to be involved in it. Get rid of this stuff. There's so much of this that we can get rid of. And if you read, I read Elon Musk, the biography from last year. This is what he does. I mean, the reason why we know who Elon Musk is because he's taken this approach to every company he's ever worked at to great success. And, him, Vivek, working together with Trump being there with real force behind it, there's reasons for actual optimism for the first time probably since Ronald Reagan when it comes to this type of stuff. And it's going to be difficult, as Reagan found out, but I think there's real hope here.
I want to see Edward Scissorhands. That's who I want to see go in and take care of NPR and the likes. Stephen, let me give you a couple more examples of NPR. I know you don't really need them, but it's kind of fun to go down memory lane when we have discussions like this. Now that it actually could be on the chopping block, they're 91 million. It's fun to see exactly why it should happen. Okay. Headline in 2022 when Trump announced for president. Breaking. Donald Trump, who tried to overthrow the results of the 2020 presidential election and inspired a deadly riot at the Capitol in a desperate attempt to keep himself in power, has filed to run for president again in 2024. Here's a 2022 tweet on emojis. Some white people may choose, and then they've got like the white thumbs up sign emoji, but it's a little bit more yellow because it feels neutral. But some academics argue opting out of the white thumbs up emoji signals a lack of awareness about white privilege, akin to society associating whiteness with being raceless. I don't understand any of that, but they're trying to shame us again. Laken Riley, nobody understands. She was, of course, murdered by an illegal from Venezuela. His name is Jose Ibarra, and he was given life in prison without the possibility of parole last week. The NPR headline, a man has been convicted of murder in the killing of Laken Riley. Just a man. He's not an illegal, not from Venezuelan, not part of a Venezuela street gang. By the way, similar sins committed by WAPO, Associated Press, Reuters, NBC, CBS. Just a man. A man was convicted. Then NPR most recently slandered Rich Lowry, our friend, who was on this podcast late at night. I think it was after, what was it after? One of the breaking news events. It was one of the debates probably. It was an assassination attempt. Who can keep track? It was assassination attempt number 2.
Which one?
I know, right? And he merged his words. He was trying to say immigrants and migrants, and he made a sound that sounded like the N-word. And anybody who's paid any attention to Rich Lowry in any of his 30 years in the public eye knows that it would literally be an impossibility for Rich Lowry to even think such a word, never mind to utter it aloud on the airwaves. But NPR dispatched C, just the letter C, Mandler, no actual first name, to say that his pronunciation sounded like the N-word to some, and then used Media Matters as C's source, having a hard time coming to any conclusion besides the obvious one about what Lowry catches himself blurting out here. C is like some trans justice advocate, as it turns out, and smeared Rich Lowry, which was then later admitted by NPR after it was publicly shamed by Rich Lowry himself, among others. And then there's the Uri Berliner piece in the Free Press where he detailed how far they'd gone to the left and how there was really no saving it. And he ultimately got let go, right? Didn't he get fired from NPR after that whole thing? Or
I think he resigned. I think he resigned shortly after.
He was separated from the company, I remember.
Yeah, conscious uncoupling, yes.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that you tell me whether we should be giving this company $100 million a year. I realize it's teaspoons in the ocean because we've got 30 trillion plus in debt, but like this seems like a good teaspoon.
Yeah, you have to start somewhere with this stuff. I wrote in 2020 that NPR should finally be defunded. When they wrote a piece, Hannah Alam, who's a reporter out of New York for them, wrote a piece saying right-wing extremists are turning their vehicles into weapons. And she cited Charlottesville. She cited an example of a car hitting someone and driving off in a protest. And that wasn't what happened. It was a black female driver who got stuck because of the protesters surrounding her car, and she drove off. And the NPR tried to make this sound like it was linked to Charlottesville when that guy hit his gas pedal, ended up killing one protester. And they used that one example to try and go and prove this narrative that there are right-wing yahoos all over the country speeding into protesters, and it wasn't the case. They flat out lied. They never corrected it. And again, we called it out. You're also overlooking when the Hunter Biden laptop story came out. And of course, we know what happened with the New York Post. The New York Post was frozen off of Twitter for that because of activists in Twitter and Facebook. Andy Slavitt from Facebook said, we're going to pause the story until we can confirm it. He was a comms director for Barbara Boxer in California. And this happens, and then NPR releases a statement saying some of you are wondering why we're not covering the Hunter Biden laptop story because we don't cover stories that are not interesting to our audience.
That's right.
And so this really is, I'm fine if NPR wants to exist. Let Alex Soros fund NPR, or, Pierre Odumayer, let him fund NPR. It'll be a good day when the schools have all the money that they need and NPR has to hold a bake sale.
Yes, I forgot. How could I forget about that one? Here's what happened with Uri Berliner. He was given a 5-day suspension without pay for failing to secure approval for his outside work, his piece on them. And then he resigned on April 17, saying, I cannot work in a newsroom where I am disparaged, and began working at the Free Press in June, which is where he belongs. But he was at NPR since 1999. It's a disgusting journalistic outlet. I mean, it's just propaganda. And that's fine. If you want to label yourself that and just come out openly as, left wing, like those pod guys, great, do it. There's a market for you. The left is begging for that kind of crap. Right now, they're pretending that they don't have any outlets, that they're all right-wing podcasts that control the world. The left has some of the biggest, The Daily,
and we're all funded
NPR.
by mysterious billionaires.
Yeah, but they just pretend that they're neutral. So that's why they can sit over there being like, geez, if only we could break into the podcasting world. It's like, hello, yours are the top 2 in virtually all polls or ratings, listings of how podcasts are doing. You just won't admit that they're left wing. Okay, that's the media updates. When we come back, we're going to talk about the pickle the media's in because of the Trump picks, because the latest poll shows that they have some 60% of support from the American people right now. The people are loving this Trump cabinet. It's very diverse, as we discussed, ideologically, but also in the ways the left cares about. And so far, people are like, cool. So what does the media do with that? The desperate media that wants to be relevant, that wants to be told this by J-Lo.
You matter. Your voice and your vote matters.
No, actually, no. What are they going to do? Are they going to just dump on all of the Trump picks, or are they going to try to play it straight? We'll ask Stu and Steez right after this. Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. By honoring your career calling, you can impact your family, friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 340 academic programs as of June 2024, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. Before we get to the Trump cabinet, there is news just breaking on Politico as we came to air. Kamala Harris is telling her advisors and allies to keep her political options open, saying she's in the best position to run against Trump 4 years from now, with some 40% of the Democrat Party behind her, which is the highest by far. Nobody else even has double digits. And she could be eyeing a run for California governor, and has said repeatedly in phone calls, quote, I am staying in the fight. You go, girl. You got this.
Yeah,
Don't let them tell
news.
you can't do it, right? I mean, that's like Christmas came early. How do you like that, Steve?
Yeah, I think part of this comes from the fact that when Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, she was rewarded with book deals. And, it wasn't kind of, hey, how come you just lost to this orange, goofy clown guy? It was, it was stolen. It was Russia. And Hillary Clinton remains in the good graces. And I think that that's what they're going to at least attempt to do with Kamala Harris. The problem is Harris has no apparatus in the Democratic Party. She has no real base of support. I think this is mostly a fundraising scheme because her campaign is still $20 million in debt. So keep me out there, keep me on the speaking circuit, keep me going. She has a debt to pay off. I thought it was one of the funniest things when Trump offered to pay off that debt. I think that would be absolutely hilarious. Take the $20 million from NPR and give it to Kamala Harris, pay off the debt, and off we go. But that's mainly what this is. This is a finance ploy. This is a ploy to keep fundraising and keep keep the coffers open. I don't see, I mean, maybe California governor, because that's, California is our own crazy island as it is anyway. But good luck. Have fun running in 2028.
I think she can do it. I think Steve is being too hard on her, Stu Burguiere. I think she can do this. We're going to get over our racism and our misogyny.
John Oliver told Donald Trump to do it, jump in the race and do it. So just be careful what you wish for here.
Stephen L. Miller, I have zero concerns. Fine, put it on the record. Do you have any idea the number of things I've said about Kamala Harris, all of which proved true? So, Stu, do you think there's any actual possibility here? Because they said this snap poll of the 28 field, which, by the way, would not be against Trump. It would probably be against Vance or whoever the Republicans decide to run, because Trump's term limited, finds Harris at 41%, 41, and all the rest, Newsom, Shapiro, Walz, he's back in the mix too. It's like an independent, without her, he could run. Buttigieg, AOC, Gretchen Whitmer, J.B. Pritzker. He's too busy transing kids. I don't know how he's going to find the time. Andy Bashir and others, all in the single digits. She's it. Stu, come on. She's got all the momentum behind her.
I love it. Do it, Kamala. Run, Kamala, run. This is a great example of bipartisanship in action. Democratic voters apparently want more Kamala, and so do we. Please, I beg of you, make Kamala Harris the nominee. She is. Look, this wasn't. This wasn't the easiest thing in the world. She was dealing with a really terrible administration record, which, by the way, she was a big part of and was in the room for every important conversation and could not think of anything she wanted to go differently. So that was made a little bit of sense that she would get punished for that as well. But I mean, honestly, can I see her going to California and winning? Probably she can become governor of California.
Who cares? Truly, though, who gives two shits if she becomes governor of California? I don't care what happens to them. I love my friends in California, but you're already electing a bunch of nutcases. How much worse could it possibly get? She's their problem. You choose to live in the People's Republic of California. I get it. The weather's nice, but that's up to you. If she's my problem, it's a much bigger deal. If she's the country's problem, it's a much bigger deal. That's never going to happen. Clip it, run it, and rerun it. Been there, done that. It was an utter and complete failure. Okay, the Trump cabinet, though, not a failure. Very well received so far. CBS poll, 59% of those polled approve of his choices so far. 59%. This time in 17, when he was assembling his first cabinet, or at least as January 17, only 37% approve. Which is so interesting, Stu, because that cabinet was much less loyal to Trump, much less MAGA-ish than this cabinet. So what do you make of the way Trump has approached this and how well it's being received, especially, by the way, if you look inside the numbers, by young people?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I wouldn't have predicted that big of a split between the two. I mean, I guess Trump coming in the first time was seen, it was a real shock, I think, to the nation that he won. Here, it's a little bit different, right? In 2024, people are looking back at his term as president as positive, and they see it, they remember it well. They remember the economy doing well, and I think they see a candidate that won an election fair and square and should have the rights to get to the type of people that he wants in these positions. He was elected, and he of course has to go through the Senate. There's a process that goes on there that we should respect. But when it comes down to it, it should be people that can execute the vision of Donald Trump, right? That's what these people are doing within the bounds of the Constitution and the law. And it's interesting to see that. I wonder, I mean, look, do I really think the American people have that well-developed of an opinion of Pam Bondi? I mean, probably not, right? I don't think that that's what's happening there. I think they're looking at Donald Trump and saying, we trust this guy's judgment. I know everyone says it's crazy. We heard all that. We heard the pitch from Joe Scarborough for all of these years that he was a Nazi, that he was going to put in all sorts of people that were going to be fascists. We've looked at that whole thing. We don't buy it. We didn't buy it. That's why he's going back in office and he was elected. And we're going to trust his judgment here. I mean, I think it's more of a generally positive view toward Trump, with the exception of some of the names that are a little bit different. I think as people are seeing the fact that he's willing to maybe reach out across the aisle as a positive, I think that's helping him as well. So I mean, he's in a good position, and so far,
well, listen
I think
to these
he's
numbers.
executed this plan well.
This is a CBS News poll again. Under 30, this is among those who approve, which is, as I said, almost 60% of those polled. Among those, under 30-year-olds have a 65 percentage point approval rating of the choices Trump has made so far. 30 to 44-year-olds, 62%. Goes down a little with 45 to 64-year-olds, but not much. It's down to 57, still very high. 65 and up, 52%. So the greatest support is with the under 30 crowd, Steve. And I think in part, this is just my guess, but my guess in part is I think they like the RFKJ, Marty, McCary, Maha strain of this. I think they like Elon and Vivek. I think they like people who are going to go in there and bust it up. And I actually think they probably like Tulsi and JD and people who are pushing back on some of the forever wars, which are not popular with the young people.
Yeah, that's sort of how I view this, kind of in that generation as well. Not under 30, obviously, but in the Gen X generation, as I sit here and I kind of see how Trump has kind of been mainstreamed now. I mean, you have athletes doing his goofy dance on pitches and on fields. And so there's part of that they don't feel like they're in the minority anymore. It's kind of like they can exhale and just, say and believe what they want. And I'm kind of in this reserving judgment for Trump's cabinet because I think what Trump's election was this time around was just stopping the insanity of Joe Biden's administration in the last 4 years. I don't think a lot of it is 100% we're voting for Trump because we like Trump. Biden came in right after kind of COVID had kind of passed. He was brought in to be the kind old man who isn't going to yell on social media at 3 a.m. He was going to calm the waters and he was just going to steer the ship and get everything back to normal. And there was nothing about the Biden administration that was normal, whether it's gender ideology infecting the Department of Defense or the State Department or Iranian spy rings in the State Department, the race equity platform, the DEI platform that they pushed. And I really think everyone just said, we're through with this. Much like journalism, expertise was a suicide. And so I think Trump's just bringing in these people. And I think let's just see, it may work. It may not. I have reservations about several of the cabinet officials, but Trump's election this time around is what happens when everything breaks. And I mean, every institution is captured by progressive media, academia, Hollywood. It's all one-sided view, and people are tired of it. And they're not only just tired of that, they're tired of every time they speak out in objection to it, they might lose their job. They might lose friends. Right now, they're telling people to ignore your family if they voted a certain way. And so that's how I kind of view the cabinet. Again, some of it may work, some of it may not. But I'm sitting here going like, I don't really care if Pete Hegseth doesn't have any administrative experience at Raytheon. I don't care.
No, nobody does.
I like that Tulsi Gabbard was targeted by the national intelligence, and she's now in charge of it. Jay Bhattacharya, who was targeted by Francis Collins and Anthony Fauci to be kicked off social media, is now going to be leading the NIH. That's what this election was about. It's you guys have gotten this right. You guys have gotten this extraordinarily wrong for the past 4 years. So now we're going to bring in the people who you not only disagreed with, you went after and targeted them either through censorship, through the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, or whatever. How many fine degrees did the people have who put together that brilliant Afghanistan withdrawal plan? That's really what this is about. So I don't really have strong opinions on Trump's cabinet picks. Let's see how they do.
Yeah, I love that summary. Meanwhile, and we're going to get into the specifics. We have to take a break in a couple of minutes, but I love this Peter Baker of the New York Times reaction. I know you guys reacted to this, or at least I saw you did, Steve. He tweets out on Friday night, because Trump made a bunch of announcements filling out the remaining holes in the cabinet. A new HUD secretary, labor secretary, FDA chief, CDC director, surgeon general, labor secretary, OMB director, deputy national security advisor, counterterrorism chief, and treasury secretary, all on a Friday night. It's going to be an exhausting 4 years. No sleep or rest. And one response was from Sean Agnew, who writes, "I'm so sorry this is happening to you, Peter."
Yeah, why I responded to him and I asked, why weren't the last 4 years exhausting for you? While he's accepting awards from the White House Correspondents Association and Joe Biden. This is the kind of shit that we see and we talk about, which is you took 4 years off. Why weren't the last 4 years exhausting for you? Do you know what you're even saying right now?
Now I'm going to have to work, but it's so amazing how he's trying to play his little violin
Vacation's
out there, Stu.
over.
Like, oh, I'm so tired. No sleep and no rest on trying to vet all these terrible people, as opposed to maybe like finding out how many times a neurologist has visited the White House while Joe Biden was failing, which was like 16 or 17 in 1 year, right? Like that kind of work could have also kept you up. All right, let me pause it there. When we come back, I want to go through a couple of the more controversial picks. There's an update on Hegseth, who we've been covering in great detail. And then this Surgeon General, I want to talk about her because there's already a lot of blowback, and what's going to happen with Pam Bondi, who we haven't yet discussed. Don't go away. Did you know that American homeowners nationwide have over $32 trillion in equity? And cyber criminals are targeting it with a growing scam the FBI calls house stealing. House alarms, doorbell cameras, and deadbolts will not work against these thieves because they're not after your stuff, they're after your equity. If your title is not being monitored, scammers can transfer it into their name and then take out loans against it or even sell it behind your back. The best way to protect your equity is with triple lock protection from Home Title Lock. Triple lock protection is 24/7 monitoring, and God forbid, if the worst happens, restoration services at no out-of-pocket cost to you. When was the last time you checked on your home title? Likely never. And that's exactly what these scammers are counting on. Make sure you're not already a victim. You can get a free title history report and a 30-day free trial of triple lock protection today by going to HometitleLock.com and using promo code Megyn, or click on the link in the description. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code MEGYN, HometitleLock.com. Reality check, everyone. People, look at your jawline. Yes, a sagging jawline or double chin that gives your age away or just makes you look bad. Introducing the Genucel jawline treatment with dual peptide and MDL technology. Genucel's most advanced ever technology. People go abroad and they spend thousands of bucks to get rid of a sagging jawline or double chin. Well, maybe they should try Genucel first. And with the Genucel Immediate Effects product, you could see tightening in minutes. And just in time for the Christmas and holiday season, save over 70% off Genucel's complete skincare package, featuring the jawline treatment and Genucel Immediate Effects product too. You will even get Genucel XV wrinkle treatment included for Christmas and the holidays. Go to Genucel.com/MK today. GENUCEL.com/MK. And as a special holiday gift, every package order includes a bonus beauty box with two skincare best sellers. And all orders automatically upgraded to free priority shipping. Genucel.com/MK. So we're going to talk about Pete Hegseth. I asked the audience last week after we did 2 deep dives on the allegations against him, including going through the police report in great detail. This is my copy of it, for their thoughts. And we got hundreds of emails. I love the ones that are like, I know you never read these, even though I tell them I do read them. Yes, I do. Meg Storm gets them together and she collates them and sends them to me, and I do read them. And I will tell you that the sum and substance of the opinions, if I had to characterize the overall response, is that the audience is not impressed with Pete's moral character at all. And a lot of people were a lot harsher on the judgment of his marital infidelities than I was. And many male and female listeners thought it was a deal breaker for the particular position he's applying for as Department of Defense chief, saying that's a position where you cannot be compromised. You got to be able to keep it in your pants. You can't be tempted. You got to have self-control. And this history of his with cheating on 3 wives does not suggest he's got it. And these are Pete fans like that wrote in. So just for what it's worth, this is my audience, which is not a far left audience, saying we don't like it and we do think it matters. Not everybody, but a large number, more than half felt that way. But literally nobody believes the rape allegations. I mean, not one audience member believes this bullshit, what I call bullshit, coming out of this woman who he met at this conference in Monterey, California in 2017. And he says had consensual sex with, and she says turned into a rape. Before I get to all that, one of the things that we're seeing in the coverage here is USA Today did this whole back and forth on the intoxication level and how alcohol clouded the allegations. And they're writing about how Pete's lawyer, Tim Parlatore, is telling media outlets that Hegseth was visibly intoxicated. But they have a former Utah sex crimes investigator on record saying, well, that's not true because he described himself as sober, carefully talking through a consensual encounter every step of the way. He was saying everything to make himself look the best possible light with the police. So USA Today thinks they've got police in a gotcha moment because they say Pete told cops he was sober, whereas his lawyer is saying now he was visibly intoxicated. Here is what Pete said to the cops in the actual police report, which I will read from right now. There was a party an after party in the hotel suites. There was a birthday celebration. Alcohol was provided at the after party. Hegseth stated he did not drink hard alcohol, but consumed beer at the after party. No one at the bar was blacked out drunk. Hegseth stated he remembered being led from the bar by someone, stated he was buzzed, but not intoxicated. Buzzed, but not intoxicated, which does not suggest sober. It's something in between really drunk and totally sober. He did not know who was leading him from the bar. He did not remember being chastised for being too loud. He did not remember an argument by the pool. He did not remember being belligerent with anyone, all of which had been told to the cops by others. So in any event, that's the big delta that USA Today thinks it's caught Pete in, that he said he was buzzed but not intoxicated. Now the lawyer says visibly intoxicated because that's what everybody else who looked at him said he was. Whatever, USA Today. And before we get into this, speaking of being visibly intoxicated, I know what I'm talking about because here on this show on Friday, they served up martinis, and by they, I mean my team, when the ladies from Red Scare came over, and I'm not usually drinking martinis.
I was going to ask where our drinks are.
You got to be here in the Red studio. You got to be here in the Red. Okay. But I'm not used to drinking martinis. I'm certainly not used to drinking them in the middle of the day. And it was to the point, like I had one and I did drink it over the course of an hour. And apparently I don't hold my liquor as well as I used to because after the show ended, I could barely spit out the ads, which is when we tape the ads when we're done. And I guess my team was rolling on it. Anyway, they thought it was so worthwhile that they made a cut of it. And I am now going to show you what it's like to be visibly intoxicated. I've never done the ads after a martini. Maybe I have, and I just don't remember, but I'll do my best. Every day, the rhetoric gets more and more divisive. There's panic, with some people willing to say or do anything if they think it will help their side win. There's so much uncertainty, which explains why so many people... Designed to be incredibly breathable, it keeps you several degrees cooler for a night of uninterrupted rest with a durable weave.
Sorry for partying.
In my defense, Stu, durable weave, every time I say it, it makes me laugh. What is that? That seems like what I see on late night, hosts' heads. Durable weave.
I love that, the durable weave. I love that because, every syllable was an adventure. It was each one was a roller coaster. You'd get halfway through and it would slow down and go into slow motion and then speed up again. And that's after one martini. That was incredible. I'm a fun drunk. I want a whole show of Megyn like that. I feel like we plan a day out where we have we all come together again, and Megyn's just doing shots throughout the show, and we see what it's like at the end because that would be incredible.
It's not going to end well. But I am a happy drunk. I will say that I don't usually transfer over into angry or bitter or depressed. It's it's fun. There's so much to laugh about. And the ad copy with respect to our advertisers apparently is hilarious when you've had a drink or two. And the ladies from Red Scare had a good time with it too. But back to Pete and the news of the day. Let me give you a little bit more from the absolutely dishonest media coverage around Pete Hegseth. USA Today goes through Okay, its account of what allegedly happened. Around 4 a.m. Sunday, the alleged victim returned to her hotel room and attended activities for the women's group that morning. There is nothing in here, nor in virtually any report, about the fact that the alleged victim, when she returned home to her house or to her hotel room at 4 a.m., was sober, looked sober, according to her husband. The husband went on record with the cops saying she wasn't slurring, she was standing fine. Nothing in the USA Today report on that. And NBC News, we went through some of this on Friday. You know, the vaunted organization that Joe Scarborough said, we report facts. We matter. What we do is important. What did they do? Did they report that Jane Doe, the accuser, was seen by an eyewitness flirting with Pete Hegseth at the bar, including touching his leg or arm prior to the alleged rape? No, they did not report that. Did they report that cops say videotapes show her at 1:15 a.m. after the only drink she allegedly had, smiling while walking and locking arms with him on the way out of the bar? They say she was not stumbling or looking drunk, that the videotapes show that. They did not report a word about the smiling. They did report the arms locked. They only cited the hotel employee, but in fact, there were 2 videos and 3 eyewitnesses, NBC. Did they report that she refused the police's request to participate in a pretext call to try to get Hegseth on tape talking about the alleged crime after the fact, and she wouldn't do it? No, they did not report on that either. Did they report that Pete says it was consensual, and after the fact, she told him that she was going to tell her husband she fell asleep in somebody's room, and that the husband told cops simultaneously that when she got home, she told the husband that she must have fallen asleep? They only report half the story, that Hegseth told that to the cops and did not provide what is verifying information from the husband in the police reports. That indeed, the very same thing Pete Hegseth says she promised him she would do is what the husband said she did when she got back to their hotel room 4 a.m. looking totally sober and not drugged. There is not a single publication, not one, that is reporting on the implausibility of this woman alleging she had 1 glass of champagne around midnight, leaving that bar around 1:15, being seen on videotape at 1:15 and 1:30 a.m., totally fine and not drunk, being seen by 2 eyewitnesses in the bar, totally fine and not drunk, being seen by a hotel front desk clerk at 1:30 a.m. when he chastised them at the bar, at the pool for being too loud, appearing totally fine and not drunk. So 1:30 a.m., she is not drunk and no one has suggested otherwise. And then 4 a.m., the husband is describing somebody who looks totally fine and not drunk. When was she drugged? When was she drugged? When was she drugged? When was she drugged? Where is that in any of the media reports? Nowhere. They're too focused on Pete's alleged inconsistency by saying allegedly that he was totally sober, whereas his lawyer says he was intoxicated. And then you look back at the police report and they got even that wrong, Stu.
Yeah. It seems like all of this is wrong. And of course, they're going after this for a reason, right? They want to sink this nomination, and the media is reporting it this way for a reason. You know, as you point out, it's not the best story in the world. And I'm sure Pete wishes it wasn't true. The parts of it that he's acknowledged are not ideal, suboptimal, to say the least. You know, that being said, of course, criminal activity like this is way, way beyond what we're talking about. And, honestly, you go to Washington, D.C., and it's going to be difficult to find people. Seemingly, it's very hard to find people who haven't gone down and had these personal issues. I mean, I got news for you. If you had problems with Pete Hegseth, wait until you get a load of RFK's history going back with women. It's not pretty.
Have a point.
Yikes.
You have a point.
It's going to be true, and they're not alone. I do prefer the old school way. I think where we should be able to find people who can do these jobs, who can keep this stuff together. For important gigs like running the Pentagon. It's an important job. I wish we could find that. From what I know of Pete, I don't know him well, but people that I know have interacted with him had a really high praise for him, generally speaking. But it does feel like they're going down this road, and it's going to be difficult to get through a confirmation, because you have one side that says believe all women, of course, unless it's one of their own being accused, then they don't believe them at all. And the other side, you still have, I think, a bunch of old school Republicans who have an attachment to the way things used to go. And whether that's just morally or just to more of a larger military, more aggressive military that are going to be looking at someone like Pete Hegseth and questioning whether he's going to execute their vision of things. So it's probably going to be difficult, but I still think he has a chance. I mean, you don't think he's disqualified from getting through confirmation because of this, do you, Megyn?
I don't think so. And I don't think he should be. This is totally unfair. If they're going to disqualify him over something, then okay, look at his marital history. And if you think that rises to the level, I mean, that's at least not in dispute. But this is a totally bullshit allegation in my view. I just think it's so readily apparent that it's made up. And I think this would be very, very unfair to tank him over. If you want to say he's not qualified, you want to talk about stuff we know he did, that's all fair game. And I think even Pete would say that. But you know what the problem is here, Stephen, is that you could potentially get to a situation. So far, this woman hasn't come forward. And I've said I would interview her very fairly, notwithstanding my opinion of her story. I would interview her very fairly. But she is possibly going to come forward. I mean, that they usually pop up in some way, shape, or form, especially with the Democrats who are going to be salivating over this woman, looking to give her a Christine Blasey Ford moment. And that the Trump campaign, team is not going to want to allow. That this whole thing goes off the rails into another Blasey Ford type inquisition. And it's like, is it worth it, right? Because there are a lot of qualified people you could put in this position.
Yeah, if they don't like Pete Hegseth's marriage history, wait till they hear about the guy who appointed him. I think a lot of this, and I haven't, in all honesty, and I'll tell you why, I haven't dug into the nitty-gritty details of this story because I think, like a lot of other normies, this is why you don't smear a Supreme Court justice nominee with zero evidence that he had even met his accuser. Because when you get real things that come out like this, people tune it out. They say, you're just trying to Brett Kavanaugh this guy. No, and this is what I'm saying, though. Was he criminally charged for any of this behavior? I don't think so. Okay.
No. They looked into it and decided not to.
Exactly. No criminal charges on this. And so, yeah, you're right. It doesn't look good. It's Trump's giving himself a headache. But Trump's also the guy who basically, when they were calling on him to pull the Kavanaugh nomination, he said no. He said, we're going to go forward with this and you're going to back up. And there are a lot of people who are Trump critics who are not on his side, myself included, who saw the Brett Kavanaugh moment as a kind of a radicalization moment that said, if they're going to do this to this guy who there's no evidence he had even met Christine Blasey Ford. And now you have another questionable morality nominee coming forward before the Senate, which he's going to have to explain this behavior. And then they're going to have to decide if he's contrite enough or if he's honest enough and vote on it. But this is why the Me Too movement doesn't go after stand-up comedians over a bad date. You don't send a spreadsheet around called the Shitty Media Men's List with anonymous accusations to avoid lawsuits. They blew a lot of credibility with the Me Too movement, who Rose McGowan is still the only person to come out of that entire thing with her integrity intact. And then they also blew a lot of credibility over Brett Kavanaugh. And this is why you don't do that. Because now you have a guy who made some questionable decisions in his personal life, he's going to have to answer for them. But when you say, well, they're going to pull the nomination, no, he's not. This is Trump's bread and butter. We're going to double down and we're going to defend him, and we're not going to give them a scalp. If Pete Hegseth wants to withdraw, he can do that. Similar to Matt Gaetz, you can just withdraw and save everyone the headache. But again, this is why you don't engage in the kind of scorched earth politics that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi did with Brett Kavanaugh and Dianne Feinstein, who, led that whole kind of thing because they were going to lose control of the Supreme Court. And this is now the situation. This is very similar to what I said about how you get.
We don't know whether she's going to come forward. I mean, it appears that she may be under some sort of a non-disclosure agreement. That was reported that Pete, several years later, she came back to him asking for money.
And NBC or somebody can pay her lawyers. Yeah, whoever she goes to, 60 Minutes, they can pay for her legal.
Yes, you're saying that they'll make it worth their while to come forward. But if she does, this is the thing. So, if you come forward with your name, then the media starts digging on you, Stu. And the thing here's what's so unfair. It is unfair that these women can hurl this accusation and it's out there. And we know Pete Hegseth has been accused of rape. They just keep putting that in and we don't know anything about the accuser. I mean, this could be, I have no idea. I don't know who this is. It could be the least credible human being on earth. She could have a long list of lies in her past. She could have accused somebody else in her past falsely. That would be relevant to know, would it not? Like, what? We don't get to know any of that because her anonymity is protected. Now, I'll tell you something. We recently had an experience with this, with Doug Emhoff being accused by somebody, not of rape, but of slapping her across the
completely
face.
Blacked out.
And let me tell you something. We did a deep dive on her. We did figure out who it was, and we did a deep dive on this woman to see whether she had credibility problems. She was a nutcase. There was reason to be very suspect of her, and we did not find any of those things, but we did not rush to air with her name. Nor were we given permission to. So I don't know what the media is going to do about this woman, and I don't know whether this woman's going to come forward, but you know, there are risks. There are real risks because if she comes forward and turns into a circus, Stu, I don't know that Team Trump is going to think Pete's worth it, with all due respect to Pete. And if she does that, she's fair game, and she's definitely going to take a lot of incoming. That's going to make her feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be a positive thing to go through. Obviously, if it's a real accusation, it's obviously horrible. If it's not, you'd expect a carefully rolled out unveiling of who this person is, with media pieces that are fawning over her that we will get right before the confirmation hearings begin. I would expect nothing less from the media and the left working together. I don't know, who she is. I don't know what happened in that room. None of us do. But part of this is this isn't the. I listened to your whole breakdown of this story, Megyn, and it was by far the most detailed that I've heard anywhere in the media that went through all of this stuff. And, it takes somebody who actually knows the law and cares about the process to go through it with any accuracy. And it doesn't seem like the media has any interest in that. Just saying, hey, this person's accused of rape, in most people's minds, when they're not focused on this on a day-to-day basis, is automatically disqualifying. It doesn't feel like you could ever go through that until it happens to you. It feels like this foreign thing where, I mean, how could they possibly, be innocent of this? Why would they be accused? I heard someone on Fox News say almost exactly that, which was, this is a woman. She said she had gone through a situation like this. She had gone, God forbid, had to go do a rape kit. She's like, no one would choose to do something like this. And like that, I think connects with a lot of people who would do that. On the other hand, what we're talking about here is a life-destroying event. If there is not another excuse for her behavior that night, her life is over. She's ruined her marriage. She's ruined her relationship with her children. She's probably, ruined any reputation she has in town with her friends. Everything is destroyed. I'm not saying that that's what she came up with an excuse. I don't know. But it's absolutely human in a moment like that to come up with some excuse that would explain away what you did. And we were requested for a while that we were just going to believe all women, as if women never came up with never made a bad life choice. Like, they make bad life choices just like dudes do. And sometimes they do really devious things just like guys do. That is very, very normal. And I will say, whenever we talk about these types of issues, the people who come to me and are very, very clear about that point are women. I knew women like this. I went to college with women who manipulated their boyfriends, who said things like this all the time. It's women who are intricately involved and have been in those moments and have friends who have made terrible choices like that. So to act like this accusation proves that it's true is completely false. I don't think the American people are in the same position where they're going to just believe these things reflexively anymore. I think because of the Kavanaugh thing and the Me Too generation sort of fading out, there is a little bit of skepticism here, but we should be fair here. These things should be proven in a court of law. They can't be just dragged out through the media like this.
And in this case, obviously the cops did not think there was even probable cause to believe her, which is a much lower standard. That's the standard to bring a charge, probable cause. The prosecution did not believe it was there. They did not arrest him. They did not decide to prosecute him. And by the way, the fact that she was married when this happened and that her husband and her two children were down the hall in the same hotel must be reported by the news media. Another failing in this, the Associated Press report just states that the husband was, quote, the woman's partner. The woman's partner. Well, what's that? I mean, being married is a much bigger commitment than just being a partner, Associated Press, which you should know. Just a couple more failings by them. Do USA Today and the Associated Press report that Jane Doe was seen by an eyewitness flirting with Pete, touching his leg or arm, like we went through with NBC? No, neither one does. Does the AP report that 2 witnesses at the bar say she appeared fine and not drugged? And does the USA Today? USA Today cited 1 witness, and the Associated Press doesn't mention it at all. Do they point out that the videotapes show her at 1:15 a.m. smiling while walking and locking arms with him on the way out of the bar, and say that she did not look drunk or stumble? USA Today, nothing on the smiling. AP, nothing. They say absolutely nothing about the videotapes, the smiling, or the locking arms. This is such bullshit. Did they report on how the front desk guy saw them at 1:30 and said she didn't look intoxicated at all? USA Today, no. Associated Press, no. I mean, I could go on. No. I'm just looking at all those same lists. Refusing the cops' request to participate in a pretext call. No. Did they point out that the timeline doesn't make sense for something being slipped into her drink? When could it possibly have happened? USA Today, no. Associated Press, no. I mean, it's just, it's too much. I want to say one thing. The audience had, and maybe Meg Storm, maybe we can post some of these comments because they were actually very interesting. If you want to email me, by the way, it's Megyn at megynkelly.com. A lot of law enforcement, nurses, and prosecutors emailed me who listened to the show with really interesting thoughts. And one, I believe this is a prosecutor who handled sex crimes, or it was a nurse who does sexual assault exams, but it was somebody with standing to know, said the reason she may have waited to go get the exam from the alleged day of the rape, which was the wee hours of Saturday into Sunday, and then she didn't actually get the exam until Thursday, is because she said by that point, Rohypnol would be out of your system. And so it would not appear suspicious if she had to give a blood test that there was no date rape drug found. Or maybe it was urine, I can't remember. One or the other, she said by Thursday, it would be out. And no nurse or prosecutor would be expecting to find it. Whereas if she got the exam right after, they would know definitively whether she'd been drugged. I thought that was very interesting. Many of the audience members thought this may have been a setup by her and or the husband, that she'd been texting the husband about how Pete looked like a creep and these ladies are making comments about Pete, but he reminded her of some guy where the husband said, oh, you mean the guy who tried to sleep with my wife, who they were calling TDB, and some of our audience was like, that stands for total douchebag, which maybe that's right. I don't know. Either way, that was interesting, and they think the whole thing was a setup, that these two were creating a dialogue. I don't think it's a setup because I don't think the husband would have told the cops she looked fine at 4 a.m. if he was part of a setup. He would have said she came home looking out of it, makeup smeared. She didn't know where she'd been. Like, he would not inadvertently have thrown her under the bus like this. And then a lot of the audience pointed out that they thought it was weird the husband was there in the hotel to begin with. And given his comment about somebody else having tried to sleep with his wife, they said, why was the husband there? Like, what husband takes the kids and goes and stays at the hotel when the wife is just, some low-level handler at a Republican women's conference? Why did they do that? Why were they there? Did he have reason to suspect her from a prior incident, etc.? That's all. The audience is smart. They raised some good points. Okay, I'll say one other thing before we move on to other nominees. Pete, I know, has had a bit of a religious evolution over the past couple of years. He's definitely leaned a lot more into his faith, his Christian faith. And so, the audience can decide for themselves whether they think that'll change his behavior when it comes to wives, et cetera, or whether they care. But I know that from his friends and our mutual friends who have watched it happen.
That's part of the reason they're going after his tattoos, by the way, because of that reformation that he's gone under. That's why they're going after the tattoos. So it's, your best point is Yeah, your best point is how much they leave out. Press media bias and journalistic bias isn't about how they lean in a story. It's about the details that they feel like they have to omit to push the narrative that they want to push, whether it's the immigration status of a brutal murderer who, great, we're financing his stay now for the rest of his life. If it's the details of somebody that they say is a victim of sexual assault, if you have to omit details from a story, it proves like what you're doing is not journalism. And this is an exact kind of thing that you would say to somebody like Jim Vanderhey and say, if you're going to report on this, report the whole thing. And if you leave out stuff, there's a reason why you've decided to leave it out. And it's not just because of editorial length or time.
Well, let me ask you this,
60
Stephen.
Minutes.
If this kind of allegation were made against Barack Obama, do you think the media would have left on the editing room floor all of those exonerating facts? I've been listening.
Of course not. They would go after the accuser, which is what we've seen that happen. You mentioned the Doug Emhoff thing. That's a perfect example of how that was completely blacked out during the course of the campaign, and people were shouting this from the rooftops. Okay, so Doug Emhoff was interviewed on several occasions, and the only time he was asked about it, he said, "This is a distraction," and the journalist moved on. And this is again part of it, where we see how accusations are covered both against people on the political right and people on the political left. And they can argue that Doug Emhoff wasn't running for office all they want. He would have been first gentleman of the United States and had enormous influence over the sitting president. And so again, people see this. They see what is covered. They see what is not. And like I said, when you blow so much credibility on something like Brett Kavanaugh, now here comes Pete Hegseth, who again has to explain his behavior. I fully believe that. And the Senate is going to have to do their job, which they are granted to with the Constitution of the United States. But normies see this and they go, well, you did this to Brett Kavanaugh. You've done this to whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You can argue about the you can argue about the E. Jean Carroll stuff with Donald Trump. And people, you not only played it, you overplayed it. And so, again, whether it's true or not, people just tune this stuff out. They just say, you lied to me about this one. You lied to me about this one. You won't cover something like Doug Emhoff. And now you're trying to push this. Isn't it incredible how all of a sudden the media can rediscover accusations of assault and abuse after not talking about it for 5 months of a presidential campaign because they were afraid that if we're the one that writes the story about Doug Emhoff, and it leads to Donald Trump walking back into the White House, your happy hours are over. You don't get book party invites. You don't get invited on MSNBC. And that's really what the state of journalism is today. They care more about their social status than they do telling the truth.
So. Here's what's so annoying, though. I don't need them to disbelieve this accuser. And I didn't need them to believe the Emhoff accuser.
Right. You just need to report
That's never been my
the
position.
facts.
They just need to report on it. They wouldn't report on Doug Emhoff. Would I normally be doing story after story on the first spouse's infidelities and also alleged assaults? That one would have made the news no matter what. Of prior women, not the current, candidate, but prior women? No. The reason that was such a story is because the media made him our new face of non-toxic masculinity. That was the thing, Stu. They were shoving him down our throat as like the new, kinder, gentler, sweater-wearing antidote to these toxic Republican men. And then it was game on. He accepted it. He leaned into it. He paraded himself all over the media as that guy. So it was game on in discovering who Doug Emhoff actually was. I mean, I'll say this for Pete. He's not, in my experience, been out there parading himself as some sort of paragon of virtue when it comes to his female history. So that's one point in his favor. Well, I get it, ladies. I mean, I have a lot of women in the audience who are not ready to forgive cheating on 3 wives. I get it, sisters. I get it. It's just, to Steve's point,
but we're explaining why it's tolerated.
Who did that too. Let me finish. We have a president who did that too. And it may be, Stu, that's it. Trump took up all the goodwill. There's no more goodwill to hand out to the cabinet members. And he gets hung up on that. But I'll give you the last word, Stu, on Pete, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I'll just say that, first of all, with Doug Emhoff, when it really is an incredibly low-key insult when you tell a man that he's redefining masculinity. I don't know that's not a compliment. That's not how that works at all. I feel like with Pete, part of this too, I think is, he's not trying to redefine masculinity. People just look at him and know he's a dude. He's a military guy. They keep putting these pictures out of him in no shirt on, and they're like, oh, can you believe this guy's going to be Secretary of Defense? And I'm like, are you running his promotional campaign? People are going to love this. They're going to love somebody who can just stand up and be a guy. And look at, the fact that, his behavior has not aligned with what we would, want out of a husband in these particular situations is, I think, part of the noise around him. They're going to come after that. We all know they're going to bring these things up. I just think that they have just burned themselves so many times over this and have taken what is a good instinct to try to make sure that terrible men are responsible for their behavior. Like that, the Me Too movement could have had real good that came out of it. The message of not believe all women, but that all women should be taken seriously. They should be taken seriously, not just brushed off. And they blew it. Like they took all that
and they had no interest in Joe
people.
Biden. None. Tara Reid, her story was buried. I know, I'm sick of it. I think most people are sick of it. I mean, if I were Pete, I'd go up there and I'd say, I am humiliated about what happened in my personal relationships. And since then, I've done a lot of work to regain the trust of my spouse and those I've hurt. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And I am not going to go into detail on private relationships between me and other women. And I will say this in Pete's defense. You never know. I'm not suggesting his prior wives of doing anything. I have zero knowledge on this front, so please just know that. But you just never know what's happening in somebody's marriage. You don't know whether the other person, and I get it. Like, I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying if I were Pete, that's how I would handle that, because they don't know. These senators don't know what was the status between Pete and his wives. Like, what was deteriorating? Why did he make these choices? I don't really care. I don't think the American public cares. It's true. He knows it's true. He should admit it, apologize for it, express regret over his bad personal behavior, and see if he can get them to move on. The potential criminal charge is a much different matter. That he's going to have to wrestle with. He's going to have to wrestle with it. And Trump has to decide whether he wants to watch that play out on the airwaves. Okay, let's move on, because there's a lot of other stuff we should get to, including this. Just breaking. Special counsel Jack Smith moves to dismiss election interference case against Trump. He's dumping the J6 case.
But
he has asked the court for time to assess the unprecedented circumstances of pending criminal cases against the incoming president. He wants the case dismissed without prejudice, because he's a douchebag, because he wants the ability to bring it again after Trump leaves office. And now they're pointing out in the media, that this actually leaves open the possibility that Trump could pardon himself to foreclose the possibility of legal jeopardy in the future. Please do it. Do it. Donald Trump, the country does not want to see this nonsense go on. This is ridiculous. Jack Smith has made a fool out of himself.
If there's any way to prove that these cases seem to be politically motivated to stop Trump from becoming president again, when he's elected and they all just go, we tried, close the case, that's a pretty good indicator that they didn't really mean what they said in all of this stuff. And, I'm not a fan of what happened on January 6th, but the insurrection thing, the 14th Amendment, it was never charged with this. We can argue about the legality of the fake electors, but really, if he really did commit these crimes against the country and democracy, and you just fold shop when he wins, it's kind of like the end of democracy Hitler talk. We called him Hitler. It was going to be the end of democracy. And then he wins. And now it's like, we'll work with him. Let's go have lunch with him. The way, and this was another thing about talking about getting back to normal. Joe Biden's Justice Department, led by Merrick Garland, who was Obama's Supreme Court nominee, who never sat on the court because of Donald Trump, of course, these were weaponized investigations, and it had never been done in the history of our country. And if you recall, back when Obama was elected, they asked Obama, are you going to go after Cheney and Wolfowitz for Abu Ghraib and war crimes? And he just said, no, we're going to move forward because it's what's best for the country. When they asked Trump about Hillary Clinton in 2016, he kind of did I was just shitting. I'm not going to charge. I'm not going to lock her up, whatever. And then in 2020, here's Joe Biden going, we're going to investigate him and we're going to charge him with crimes. And again, this is one of these things.
Not just J6.
And you open the door for this.
Which really outraged them. But
Alvin Bragg,
Stormy Daniels.
Danny
But
Willis.
speaking of January 6th.
Everything.
This is in the news just this week, guys, that the cop who fatally shot Ashley Babbitt, 36 years old, at the J6 riot, who's been absolutely made a hero of by the left. Instead of asking serious questions about whether she was doing something that deserved her being shot on Capitol Hill. Did they see a weapon? Was there something? Granted, she was trying to break through a door. I get it. So were a lot of other people. What was she doing that suggested she was an imminent threat, that she was out to do harm? What we've learned now, thanks to the House Administration Committee's Subcommittee on Oversight, which is GOP-led, they released a letter last week showing that this cop, Captain Michael Byrd, 56, has a long disciplinary record that includes leaving his loaded handgun in a public bathroom in the Capitol Visitor Center, improperly firing his gun at a car near his home while off duty, and abusing a Maryland cop who tried to stop him from entering a high school football field, again, while off duty. Then they said that there are at least 3 entries in his internal affairs record that are missing, according to the chairman of the committee. This is disturbing, and the media will never, never cover the shooting death of Ashley Babbitt fairly, Stu, because she was there on J6. She was inside the Capitol, and she was trying to push her way in along with some other angry rioters. However, you don't get the death penalty for that. And that's what this cop unleashed on her. And it appears to have had some history of being negligent with respect to his duties and his firearm.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating in that every other shooting by a police officer of someone that I can ever remember got the exact, opposite treatment by the media. They always take the side of the person who was shot, whether it was legitimate or not. I mean, look, I don't think it was the right, we don't want to be inside of a building like that and pushing forward when you see an officer there, probably not a good idea to do what she did. But as you point out, we would hope that it could be handled in literally any other way. And all of these prosecutions, all of these storytelling, all the storytelling by the media has gone for one purpose, which was to keep Donald Trump out of the job he's about to enter. And they tried really hard on this. Coming out now and saying, well, we're going to drop these investigations, we're dropping these cases, is like coming out after the Super Bowl and going to the press conference after and saying, well, you know what? Well, we forfeit. Well, sorry, you've already lost. Their whole goal was to try to get a jury to look at these cases, take them seriously, and punish Donald Trump. And in a way, they got it. They got their case heard. They got a jury, not of 12 people, but of 150 million people who came out a few weeks ago and said, you know what? We saw all this evidence. We don't buy it. That's the end of the day. I mean, I think if people really believe that Donald Trump had tried to overthrow democracy and destroy the country, and they believe those charges, he probably wouldn't have won, even with the terrible record of Biden and Harris. At the end of the day, they didn't believe it. And this is infuriating to the left that put all their eggs in this basket and watched each one of them crack.
You look back, Jonathan Turley, by the way, Just the News broke the story that I just brought you about Ashley Babbitt and this cop who shot her. But you look at this story, Jonathan Turley actually did a good long piece on his blog, jonathanturley.org, about it, Steve. And he was saying that liberal pundits often refer to the number of officers who died that day. And the truth is not a single officer died that day on January. Not one. The only person to die that day was Ashley Babbitt, who was shot by what appears to have been a trigger-happy cop with a long history of disciplinary action against him. I mean, why isn't this everywhere? this guy appears to have been a serious problem long before he ever saw Ashley Babbitt. And he points out how the media lionized him and portrayed the killing of Babbitt as clearly justified, which is in sharp contrast to the approach the media has taken in other shootings by law enforcement. An unjustified killing by police on that day was inconsistent with the public narrative pushed by the pundits and the press. And the truth is that President Trump had offered 10,000 National Guardsmen, and it was rejected. Pelosi didn't want it. They didn't want to make it look worse than it was, and they were worried that somehow Trump might use these troops in some way that they might find objectionable. And Ashley Babbitt, who was wrong in her actions, but Turley continues, but the penalty for breaking a window and unauthorized entry is not death in this country. They won't investigate this guy. They did already and cleared him of charges. It's a different narrative about what happened that day that you won't hear on these so-called truth-loving media outlets like MSNBC, Stephen.
Yeah, I do think that it should be part of the story of this, as if, did you have a guy who was feeling a little bit more gung-ho than he should have? I think I'm harder on Ashley Babbitt than a lot of people on the political right. I think that if you're somebody who breaks into the Capitol building, or if you jump the White House fence, for example, at that point you're playing with your life. And no, that doesn't mean that she deserved to die or anything like that. But
many of these folks were let in.
Yeah,
I don't defend January 6th.
And that's what I mean. And that's what I mean. There's a lot of this where this is one of the problems with, the charges around January 6th is there was clearly people that should have been charged with crimes. And then you get kind of like the MAGA grandma going through thinking she's on a tour. And to
getting
Stu's
waved
point
in
about
by cops.
Right. And to Stu's point about this, and this is the best thing about this, which is, right, they take the police officer's point of view no matter what on this side. When we just spent an entire summer of riots over cops shooting people like Jacob Blake, who had a knife. And then, of course, we had George Floydism. This is the problem, and this is what the media fostered. When you basically say there's not going to be any penalty for burning down communities, or we saw staging Capitol houses over things like abortion or Kavanaugh in places like Michigan and Wisconsin, eventually the other team thinks that they can get away with it. And I think that had a lot to do with the behavior on January 6th, which is, hey, these people are storming the Supreme Court building over Brett Kavanaugh. Nothing's being arrested on them. We've had a Charlottesville every week in this country since last October 7th, and these people aren't arrested. They are just they break into buildings and they set up encampments on the tents, and they're just allowed to do this stuff. And people on the political right see this and they go, how are these people allowed to do this? How are they allowed to block traffic? How are they allowed to burn down businesses? How are they allowed to storm Capitol houses with no repercussions whatsoever? And I think that had a lot to do with, well, if they can do it, we're going to do it too. And that also explains a lot of Trumpism in a vacuum, which is, you're going to get away with this. How come these people aren't getting away with it? Yeah. And then they go and they vote.
Yeah, you're right. It explains some of his cabinet picks, like Matt Gaetz, just the big middle finger. That did not work out. But let's spend the time we have left on this one cabinet pick in particular, because I love Marty McCary at FDA. That's awesome. Of course, I love RFKJ, who will be overseeing, if he gets confirmed, all of HHS, which is great. And then you've got the Surgeon General, about whom I have more questions still. Dr. Janet Neshawat, for Surgeon General, medical director at CityMD, a network of urgent care centers in New York and New Jersey, a Fox News contributor. She's the sister-in-law of Representative Michael Walz, who's Trump's pick for NSA. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts, this guy said, take her, because being the person who runs CityMD and went to med school in the Caribbean, I know, elitist, whatever. But let's face it, that is not where our best doctors come from generally. It's just not. Sorry. Those schools are a lot easier to get into and have generally different standards. Not that she's going to be operating on people. She's the chief spokesperson. So her time on Fox News may have convinced Trump she can do it. She's very pro-Trump. But I don't really care about that stuff so much as I care about the fact that she loves masking. She loved the vaccine. She loved to mask the children long into the pandemic, past the point where the rest of us were saying, stop that. Right. Get your kid boosted and get your kid vaxxed. Oh, yeah, your under 12 kid can get vaxxed. August of 2021, saying, wear a mask. Delta's different. June of 2021, downplaying the risk of myocarditis in kids who get the vax. October of 2021, talking about kids getting the COVID jab and how the risks are extremely low. January of 22, still promoting all the boosters and the vaccines and masks and how beneficial they are. The point is, Stu, she didn't see through any of it. Unlike people, like even McCary was pro some of this stuff in the beginning, but got there at the same time she was writing op-eds, calling for more masking. He was writing them saying, no, that was bullshit. Take the masks off right now.
Yeah, and of course, as we all remember, when the words 15 days to slow the spread were uttered, Donald Trump and Anthony Fauci were on the same stage uttering them, right? So a lot of people early on in the pandemic said all sorts of things. And I think there's some grace that is appropriate for a lot of them. To be in 2021 and in 2022 saying those things, you think would be basically just disqualifying for an incoming Trump administration. Trump obviously was, had some very early instincts to try to shut some things down and see what we could do to slow what was going on. He was off of that bandwagon pretty darn quickly. I think there's a distinction for Trump in particular when it comes to just the vaccines, and that I think Trump is at odds with a lot of the people in his base as to the success level of what occurred there. He doesn't talk about it all that much, but I think he's pretty proud of his record on that. And the fact that he is appointing people like RFK Jr., who are very much on the opposite side of that, shows that he's willing to take other viewpoints. This one, though, doesn't seem, you kind of understand RFK. RFK did something very, very important for Donald Trump during the campaign. There's no surprise that he would be rewarded. This one, though, just does seem weird, and maybe he didn't have all the information about where she stood on a lot of these issues. I'm
not in favor of this person at all, based on what I've seen. I'm sorry. August of 21, she's interviewing with Pete Hegseth on Fox, saying, Delta's different. If you want to protect yourself, wear a mask. Here's Marty McCary, the same month, August 2021, op-ed in the Wall Street Journal making the case against masks for children. Very different. Like either you see the evidence and you can be a leader on it, or you don't and you can't. And people who got COVID that wrong should not be in charge of the next gen of our health officials or spokespeople. I'm against it. Sorry, but I am. Okay, guys, it's a pleasure. Thank you both so much for being here. And thank you all for joining me today. We're going to spend the rest of the week doing a deep dive into Trump's incoming cabinet. We've interviewed most of them, and we'll have that for you tomorrow. So she touts her record on child sexual abuse cases. She also touts her record on domestic violence and, prosecuting the offenders and standing up for the victims of it, except if they happen to be the victims at the hand of her own husband.
I mean, this story is unbelievable.
And it's growing now, okay? Because the accuser, the woman who says she was slapped in the face by Kamala's husband a year before they got married. I mean, this isn't ancient history. This happened in 2012. They were married, I think, in 14 or 13. So, yeah, here's a picture. She's blurred out because she's maintaining her anonymity right now. She doesn't want her life to be ruined. She's a successful attorney. She's married now. She's got a great life. And, she's going to have a shitstorm rain down on her if she attaches her name to these allegations. But I believe this woman entirely. She's putting the story out there first person with the Daily Mail. She's a lawyer. She knows very well she's going to get sued for defamation if this is not true. No lawsuit has been forthcoming, Steve. And the first person testimonial has got some disturbing things in it.
Yeah.
A couple of points that I just wanted to raise. So she talks about how she met him the first date. He brings his son in, who is older at the time, like a teenager. The first date, he brings his son to meet her. Now, who does that? Everybody knows you don't bring the children in to meet like the new potential stepmother until...
That is weird. I hadn't heard that till just now.
And she knew it was weird too. She felt bad for him because she didn't want him to just wander New York City without her. She was living in New York and he was living in on the West Coast in San Fran. So fine, but it was a little red flag for her that he brings his son in. The two of them met on Match.com. She says the relationship consisted of an intense few months with Emhoff discussing marriage and children after just weeks. He starts love bombing her, Steve, which is what, I'm not saying Doug Emhoff is a stalker, but that's what a stalker and a controlling man will do. They don't come on like, hey, I'm going to beat you. Or, hey, I want to control every facet of your life and separate you from your family. They come on like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. Here's the roses. Let's take amazing trips together. Come buy a house with me. And that was the next thing. He brought her out to L.A. or whatever. I can't remember if it's San Fran or L.A. And says, I really want you to look around this house with me. And he's talking immediately about marriage and children. Marriage and children with her, like within the first couple of days. He grabs her around the stomach saying, I want more babies. I mean, they're not even dating for a long time at this point, and really wanted to leave his family behind then when she got an opportunity in the UK to move there. And he was like, what family? My wife's got this, and wanted to move to the UK with this woman who's a high-powered, I mean, it sounds like a climber, right? He's a climber. So then they go to this event. I think the people know the situation where he smacked her. It was brutal. But then she talks about how he told her about the nanny and the affair with the nanny. And she says as follows, we were in Santa Monica. He was driving his fancy car. And so I just straight out asked him, I feel like you're on the back foot in the divorce, like you're trying to make up for something. All I did was ask him one question, and he told me the whole story without skipping a beat, staring straight ahead of the road. He tells me he had an affair with his daughter's teacher. She was the teacher and the nanny, I guess. And that subsequently she claimed she was pregnant. He's telling me this very casually, like it's no big deal. He yelled at her. This is his account, that he yelled at the nanny. He never said that he hit her, but he said he got really angry with her and that she subsequently called, she claimed that whatever he did caused her to lose the pregnancy. He said she got a lawyer and was threatening litigation. I was flabbergasted, and I was taken aback by how matter-of-fact he could talk about it. Now, we know from the Daily Mail, they went and pulled the police records around, they found out where the nanny lived, and that they had a level 3 alert on this woman's house at the time that she would have been pregnant, potentially having this conversation. Wow. Which involves sirens and lights and an emergency response.
I didn't know any of this.
Yeah, to the house. So, I mean, there's a real, look, I don't know this. He denies hitting this woman. He admits having an affair with the nanny. Whether she actually was pregnant, what happened there, he doesn't admit. But I think there's a pattern with these guys. You tell me, because I've never met a man who hits just the one woman just the one time.
This is the thing that people point out. And, we don't know. And all of this stuff is complicated in the sense that it's human relationships. But as you say, if there's a pattern, the point is that the lack of curiosity about this from the media, generally speaking, the fact that the champions of women's rights and all of that stuff are just so casual about this and recoil when anyone even tries to bring it up. Mm-hmm. You saw that the other night on CNN. They tried to shut it down. Imagine if this was the other way around.
So did CNN's... they had a correspondent on Bill Maher a week or two ago, and Laura Coates, she shut it down too. When Bill Maher raised it, well, I haven't researched, I haven't looked into it, I don't know much about it. Why not? Exactly. Why don't you? And then we have to be really careful about going out there with allegations before we verified them. When have you ever exercised that in the past on CNN?
I know, I mean, just look what they've done with CBS just this week on some of the Trump stuff. I mean, it's just completely so glaring. The double standard and the lack of curiosity and the fact that and it just reminds me of the stuff with Clinton. It's just the same, isn't it? Going back all those years to Clinton. When it's our guy, it's fine.
I think they agreed that those were, quote, bimbo eruptions under Bill Clinton. I think they were very happy to dismiss those women. It's just trailer trash. Yeah. We don't need to pay attention to them. Yes. And so it's kind of interesting because I think that is the media's general attitude. But this woman is nobody's.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's interesting.
Bimbo. I
hadn't read all those details. I haven't read the story yet.
She's a sophisticated party.
Yeah.
And for her, and she's a lawyer. Trust me, no lawyer would be putting this out in writing. We would all know we'd get sued to the nth degree. And I guarantee you this woman will stand by the Daily Mail if they get sued and that she'll give them a sworn declaration. I mean, I think she's ready to fight if he picks it with her. Right. But he's trying to run from her.
They hope it'll go away and they can just get through the election and then it'll go away. Exactly.
It will.
I know.
I don't think it's going to actually have much traction if she doesn't come out and put her name to it. I think that's just a reality. Yeah. If you know her name and you see her testimonial, it's very hard to just dismiss it. But because she's anonymous and it's with the Daily Mail, who I love, but the mainstream can just say, oh, whatever. Yeah. To me, it's very disturbing. And yet they're running with these claims that have been made against Trump, which are like as far as I can understand, there is a woman who claims she dated Jeffrey Epstein in 1992.
It's just
1992, and that one time he brought her by Trump Tower, and that she opened the door to greet Donald Trump, and before she knew it, he was, quote, groping her. She said he kissed her, he grabbed her breasts, touched her waist, and grabbed her behind. And that was kind of over after that. It was like a chit-chat. They went on to talk, like Jeffrey and Trump and this woman, and then she left with Jeffrey, and he was angry because he didn't like how that went. But he and Trump remained friends. I think she says she continued dating Jeffrey Epstein for months. Anybody who dated Jeffrey Epstein for months.
But this whole thing, it's so like hilariously predictable. You know, like, suddenly it shows up, you know, a couple of weeks before the election. I mean, just like,
Trump denies it, by the way.
You could have written it, you know, something like this.
Well, you've seen, not necessarily all of these media companies, like I haven't seen CNN cover that, but I think it was in Variety, it was in the Daily Beast, it was in a lot of these publications that have absolutely no interest in this woman's story. This, you know, high-powered attorney who's doing a first-person testimonial in detail with witnesses, with receipts, totally different treatment. It's very annoying. And I mean, look, we're talking, this other woman's 1992 with no contemporaneous witnesses whatsoever, no proof whatsoever. It's infuriating. There is a lot at stake in this upcoming election, but regardless of who's sitting in the White House, the fuse on the economy's already been lit. Every 4 years, a conservative might win, but that's not enough to turn around the tide on our $35 trillion national debt. And if the left wins, it's like throwing gas on a dumpster fire. One thing you could do is to diversify your savings into gold with the help of Birch Gold Group. For millennia, gold has stood firm in the face of greedy governments, economic upheavals, and global strife, and it can protect you now. Birch Gold will help you convert an IRA or a 401k into an IRA in physical gold, tax-free and penalty-free, and it doesn't cost you a cent out of pocket. In the past 4 years, the buying power of the U.S. dollar has declined. Price of gold has gone up. Text MK to 989898 to get your info kit. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. All right, I got to ask you two other quick questions before you have to go. This was in the news like a month ago, but we've talked to you many times before about what I have said I fully believed were fake allegations against you by Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking victim Virginia Giuffre. She looped your name into it. And for the listening audience, we've gone through this many times with Alan about how your name was suggested to her by somebody else. You weren't mentioned by her in her initial round of accusations. And ultimately, you sued her for defamation. And that case went away with her saying, I may have made a mistake. So Virginia Giuffre died at only 41 years old. She's the mother of 3 kids. She died by suicide, according to the local authorities, though her father has doubts about whether that's true. He expressed them on Piers Morgan. I think we have that. Let's take a listen to her dad, whose name is Sky Roberts, SOT25.
Tell me about your reaction when you heard that she'd taken her life.
Well, first of all, I couldn't even believe it. I mean, I started crying right away. I'm still crying. I can't believe that this is happening. It's impossible. And then for them to say that she committed suicide, there's no way that she did. Somebody got to her.
Somebody got to her. Your thoughts on it, Alan?
Well, I feel terrible for her, for her family. This is not the way anything like this should have ended. She did falsely accuse me. She admitted she may have misidentified me for somebody else. I was hoping to get on with my life and let her get on with her life. By the way, we still haven't seen all the Epstein files. I want every single file out. I want every videotape out. I want
Why do you
everything.
think that is?
Well, because there are still people in there. I know a couple of people who are named, and I think there are people who don't want their names to come out. I want everything to come out because they would prove I never met the woman, never heard of her, never had any improper contact with anybody since I met Jeffrey Epstein. And so I want everything to come out. And I don't know why they aren't bringing it all. Everything, every piece of paper. Some of them being withheld by judges. And by the way, some of them would show that some of the accusations are false, that they would be negative toward the accusers. Some would be negative toward the accused. But
So you're just to be clear, you're saying you know of certain men who would be caught up in the scandal. And you believe, what, because of influence or power, that they have power over even this DOJ in not releasing these files?
I don't know what the reasons are, but I know the names of people whose names have never been released, and there's no reason for them not to be released. They may be innocent, and I know information about the accusers that haven't been released, devastating information about the accusers themselves having been involved in bringing people to Jeffrey Epstein for improper purposes. So I think all of this has to come out. The truth has to prevail. And I've been pushing for this since the day I was falsely accused.
I can vouch for that.
Day saying I want the FBI to investigate me and let everything hang out there.
You came on my show in 2020 and said exactly that long before it was resolved, and we had a full airing of everything. I encourage people to go back and listen to that. There's no question in my mind, Alan did absolutely nothing. This July, there is a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio de Janeiro. The bloc of emerging superpowers, including China, Russia, India, and Iran, are meeting with the goal of displacing the U.S. dollar as the global currency. They're calling this the Rio Reset. As BRICS nations push forward with their plans, some worry global demand for U.S. dollars will decrease, bringing down the value of the dollars in your savings. While this transition, if it happens, would not happen overnight, the Rio Reset could mark a pivotal moment. So learn if diversifying your savings into gold is right for you. Birch Gold Group can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Claim your free info kit on gold by texting MK to the number 989898. With an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let Birch Gold arm you with a free, no-obligation info kit on owning gold before July and the Rio Reset. Text MK to the number 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. We have seen celebrations in support of this Hamas terrorism around the world, including right here at home. In New York City, a rally was held yesterday with participants chanting, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Take a listen.
From the river to the sea. From the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine.
All right, that's enough of that. They held signs stating when people are occupied, resistance is justified, and, quote, end all U.S. aid to apartheid Israel, and violence, quote, by any means necessary. These are Americans. These are Americans sitting out there in Times Square. Not unlike the left, it's not that I feel they don't have a right to be there, but their message is insane. Up in Canada, our friends over at Rebel News caught video of young men cheering, waving flags, and honking in support of the Hamas-led terrorism attack on Israel. Look at this. They're having a great time. They're thrilled. They're thrilled. Ontario's premier, that's Canada's version of a governor, Doug Ford there, called these, quote, hate rallies that have no place in Ontario, saying they're reprehensible and disgusting. He's not wrong about that. Yet they continue. In Australia, pro-Palestinian protesters demanded that Australia cut ties with Israel and, quote, free Palestine.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! USA! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
It's amazing. There's no sobriety. There's no moment of honoring the dead, those who are still in harm's way and suffering. And Senator Ted Cruz, not that these people are relevant to the discussion, but it is somewhat telling. Actor Josh Gad put out a tweet, and he's got family in Israel, in support of Israel, and had to post a second tweet saying, my God, the amount of negative incoming I received for saying just, I stand with Israel. Kylie Jenner, again, what her reaction is not important, but the backlash is telling. She has 400 million followers on Instagram. She similarly put out the Israeli flag with the I stand with Israel. She had to delete it an hour later because there was so much blowback to her in just putting it. I mean, these same people are probably posting Ukrainian flags as we speak.
Oh, yeah.
But when it comes to Israel, very different story.
Well, there is a normalization of anti-Semitism, of hatred for Israel among the left today. We see it in our university campuses where Jewish students are regularly afraid to be identified as Jewish students, to wear a yarmulke, to wear clothing that identifies that they're Jewish, because the virulent hatred for Israel is such that they endure harassing, they endure that they see Hillel centers that are vandalized, that have swastikas drawn on them, and the growth of this among the radical left is a very disturbing problem, especially because so-called mainstream Democrats don't stand up against it. They don't stand up, as I described a few minutes ago. Pelosi was not able to get the Democrats to come together to say anti-Semitism is bad. That is a dangerous dynamic. And listen, if you look at the people who are celebrating across the world, both in the U.S. and abroad, those were the same people who were celebrating after September 11th. After the towers went down on September 11th, you had the very same people cheering, because there's a simple truth. Those who hate America hate Israel. And those who hate Israel hate America. The radical left is angry. It is violent. It embraces terrorism. The Ayatollah in Iran, to whom Joe Biden has sent $50 billion, he regularly chants in front of mobs of crowds, death to America and death to Israel. The two are interrelated.
He literally, to forgive the interruption, he literally tweeted out in the wake of this, quote, God willing, the cancer of the usurper Zionist regime will be eradicated at the hands of the Palestinian people, and went on from there. By the way, that tweet stayed up finally after all these people said, how does that get, how does that live on Twitter, on X? They put a warning on it, which is fine under Elon Musk. He's trying to allow, people to see it. Now you have to click on it if you want to see it. But the point is, the Ayatollah's on there, and Trump for years was kicked off.
Yep.
I want to tell you about President Biden because we don't have that much time with you left, and I want to get to this. He called a lid on any press availability. He's done. He's done working. As of noon, that happened as we went to air, Senator. He's done, I guess, for the day. And this was his message for 12 hours, absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Then a paper statement, 14 hours. Finally, he released a statement. The American president was sleeping. It seems the 3 a.m. phone call came in and he didn't pick up because he said he didn't hear about this until 7:30 or 8 the next morning. It had been going on all night. Finally, he managed to put out a statement. You tell me whether his heart is even in this. You watch it.
Today, the people of Israel are under attack, orchestrated by a terrorist organization, Hamas. The United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back. No, the world's seen appalling images. Thousands of rockets in the space of hours raining down on Israeli cities. When I got up this morning, started this at 7:30, 8 o'clock, my call. Israel has the right to defend itself and its people. Full stop. There's never justification for terrorist attacks. And my administration's support for Israel's security is rock solid and unwavering. Let me say this as clearly as I can. This is not a moment for any party hostile to Israel to exploit these attacks to seek advantage. The world is watching.
So what's happening here? What's happening after, given all the money that you already described that we've given to Israel's enemies? And he's saying the right things, at least in front of that microphone, not via his State Department, but in front of that microphone, he's smart enough to say the right things. This show is supported by Grand Canyon University. Founded in 1949, GCU is a private Christian university that's dedicated to delivering an affordable and transformative higher education. Their vibrant campus is located in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, and according to niche.com, ranked a top 25 best campus in the country. As of June 2023, GCU offers 330 academic programs with over 270 of them online, allowing you the freedom to earn your degree on your time from wherever you are. Their programs are also designed to challenge and inspire you. At GCU, your degree, whether it's a bachelor's, master's, or doctorate, integrates the free market system and a welcoming Christian worldview. And they believe that higher education should be accessible to all. Learn more about GCU's programs, competitive tuition rates, and scholarship offers from your university counselor. They're part of the supportive graduation team who take a personalized approach to helping you achieve your academic goals, walking alongside you every step of the way. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. For more information or to enroll, visit gcu.edu. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. Old Becky Hill reading the verdict would come to play a major role in this story, which no one knew at the time. But Becky almost got this verdict thrown out because of her behavior behind the scenes with the jurors. And could it still, her behavior, get this verdict thrown out? Is that totally settled? I know that we had a hearing in which a different judge said, no, I'm not throwing out the verdict. But could that be reversed on appeal? I imagine Alex's lawyers are taking that up.
No, it's incredible to watch that footage. I was sitting there that night and I was leaning forward on the edge of my seat just listening to it because I remember that emotion. And all of the docket numbers were like, but what's the answer? So
right, spit it out.
So, but we had been in that courtroom. It's very tight corners. These soaring ceilings. It was designed in the 1820s, but very tight quarters. And we had been in there every day for 6 weeks. And by we, I mean the lawyers, the law enforcement officers, the jury, the Murdochs. They were across the aisle from me. I could, exchange pleasantries every day. And so it was an extraordinary result to be there that night and listen to the verdict read by Becky. And Becky was really like the den mother of the courtroom because the clerk of court makes sure the jury has lunch, make sure that the press has the credentials, or, there's so many people and downtown Walterboro didn't have places to eat. What about food trucks, which they ultimately brought in? She was sort of the principal of an elementary school is what it felt like a little bit. So it's surreal for Becky to be the center of so much scrutiny. But what that scrutiny is about is her relationships and potential talking out of school with members of the jury, many of whom she knew beforehand. And many of the jurors knew each other. It's a small town. I'm from a relatively small town myself in the South. And, if you had 100 people in church the day before jury selection, 5 of them would have gotten a jury summons. So, people knew each other and the jury wasn't sequestered. Everybody in town knew who they were. And Becky, knew a lot of them personally. And so the question was, did she talk to them out of school? And did she say things that would prejudice them against Alec, particularly when he took the stand?
And you had jurors come forward to say, yes, at least one of them said she influenced my verdict.
And it is a small town. And we talked a little bit about the bootlegging case involving Old Buster. It's extraordinary, but Becky's grandmother and grandfather and her uncle, who was a teenager, were federally charged with felonies in that bootlegging ring. They were on Buster's payroll.
Boy. And everything is connected.
Everything's connected there. But to your question, Megyn, I think that we did have a first answer. There was a hearing back in January where the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Jean Toll, was asked by her former colleagues on the Supreme Court to take a listen to this request for a new trial. She denied it, but the defense is appealing it back to the Supreme Court. They've agreed to hear it, even though it seems unlikely they will overturn their own the person that they trusted with this decision. And then also they're very close allies with Judge Newman, who presided over the initial proceeding. He's very tight with the Chief Justice, Don Beatty. So I spoke with Dick. I saw him recently in Columbia, Dick Harpootlian, and they see their best chance at a new trial at the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond, just a little bit further removed from South Carolina, which is such a small state. And getting fresh ears at this idea of not just did Becky Hill say things to the jurors that were prejudicial, but also did the state apply the wrong standard? And it was it's a measure of degrees. Like, yes, we acknowledge that she talked with the jury, but did it move the needle? And so what they hope is that the federal court will apply a different standard.
Yeah, that they're going to argue they were held to too high a burden of proof to prove jury tampering, and that a lower standard should have been applied, which would have allowed them to prove jury tampering, which would allow him to get a new trial. The Justice Toll was great when she came in and held that hearing over Becky Hill. The allegations against Becky Hill just got weirder.
Justice Toll,
weirder.
I will say, she's just such an extraordinary figure in South Carolina history. I used to cover South Carolina politics when I was a reporter at the state newspaper in Columbia, and she was the Chief Justice at the time, former Speaker of the House. She's been in public life there for 60 years and was a young lawyer. And this is so extraordinary to me, was a young lawyer in a time when women weren't even allowed to serve on a jury until 1968.
Wow.
And so she was
did
talking to all male juries.
When she was up there, I say this lovingly, she seemed like a tough old broad in the best sense, like she wasn't going to tolerate any nonsense.
She would love to hear you say that. And she knew the Murdochs. She knew the Murdochs, and she had actually, both in the legislature, I talked with her about this, both in the legislature and on the bench, had pushed for laws that would kind of claw back some of the power that they were using, inappropriately, in her view. So she knew the Murdochs quite well over the course of decades.
She made the comment about Becky Hill that would become very well known. Here it is, SOT 52.
I find that the clerk of court is not completely credible as a witness. Ms. Hill was attracted by the siren call of celebrity. She wanted to write a book about the trial and expressed that as early as November 2022, long before the trial began.
And that led to bad behavior by Becky Hill, which got this whole thing, mucked up. But do you remember, it's been a while since we've covered this, but she also has a son who worked in the courthouse. And there was an allegation about him wiping his phone and wiping her phone on the day that they were supposed to turn them over for an internal ethics investigation. It smelled to high heaven.
It is, I think it's, if you're not from a small town in the rural South, maybe it boggles the mind, but her son was the information technology director for the county. And that was, she's an elected official. She is, but she's also, politically powerful. And some of those jobs are patronage jobs. And he was in that role and is, accused of tapping the phone of an county administrator that was communicating with the state ethics board to try to find out what was going on in the investigation with his mother. There were all sorts of wiping the phone, which, the lawyers will tell you is a fairly standard move in some defense cases, but it looked highly irregular to a layperson. Yeah, it's funny because it's such a big case. It captivated so much attention that the center ring of the circus is really Alec Murdaugh in the trial, but there's so many outer rings. With the Mallory Beach case, for example, there's another case that's ongoing about whether the convenience store where Paul bought beer, whether the owner of that convenience store has been trying to harass the Beach family over the years. That's been going on for several years. Becky is facing an investigation into her behavior, and that's been going on. So we're in multiple layers of drama with this story, and it's just incredible. Like the layers, I remember sitting in court and watching Alec during a break. He was, 6 feet away from me. And he's the center of this, he's the eye of this hurricane, and there's so much swirling around him that one person could stir up so much chaos is really amazing.
So now here we are where he's appealing. He's going to argue Becky Hill mucked up the trial to the point where he gets another trial. We don't love the chances, but one never knows. And in the meantime, the wrongful death lawsuit that Mallory Beach's family brought against Alec, is that totally resolved?
That was the remnants of that were resolved this week with a $500,000 payment from Alec's insurer that had been tied up, and that was paid to the lawyers the paper was filed this past Monday. So that case is pretty well wrapped up.
Did the family get a payment too?
The family did. Not this past summer, but summer of 23, they received a payment largely from Parker's convenience store, this convenience store where Paul bought beer, on the order of $14 million. So it was a significant civil judgment that, and I learned a lot about personal injury law in the course of reporting this book. But, personal injury, this was considered, what was Mallory's life worth? It is blood money. And so it's a difficult fact of personal injury law that the more money that you get paid is a reflection of what, a jury might think your loved one's life is worth.
I'm sure it's a special form of sentencing for you, because every time you get into the car that money bought or the bed that money paid for, it's got to make you feel awful.
And they will tell you, and they will tell you, Mrs. Pamela Pinckney, Hakeem Pinckney's mother. Hakeem was the paraplegic teenager who died in a nursing home and was robbed by Alec Murdaugh twice. She would tell you she would give back all of it for time with her son. It's the proxy we have in our judicial system to make a family as whole as possible, knowing that nothing really ever will.
For those of us holding our breath for the past several months as we came up to this election, we can finally exhale. Work can at last be done on the major issues this country's facing, one of the most significant being our national debt. The fact is, we're broke, and that debt is a house of cards for our nation that cannot be quickly dismantled. So the strategy remains the same. You might want to diversify your savings. This is why I want to tell you about Birch Gold. So many things are out of our control, out of our president's control. So it can be important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group can help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And the best news is it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Text MK to 989898 to get your free info kit. Plus, right now, you will receive a free 1-ounce silver eagle coin for every $5,000 purchased. Protect your savings with Birch Gold. Text MK to 989898 and claim your eligibility for free silver today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show and today's True Crime Christmas Special. Today we are diving deep into the case of Alec Murdaugh, and there are updates in this incredible case, believe it or not. His story begins much earlier than the crimes that made national headlines over the past few years, and no one has covered the story quite like the Wall Street Journal's Valerie Borline, who wrote the book The Devil at His Elbow. We get into everything from Murdaugh's family history to the details of his downfall and the new info. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Are you ready to jumpstart your health in 2025? Now's the time, right? Lumen can help you. Did you know that 80% of resolutions fail by February? Womp womp. You can beat the odds, though, with Lumen and improve your health. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you are burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you will know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fat or carbs, and much more. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, and you will know that optimal metabolic health has many benefits. You will see this firsthand, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and better sleep. Take the next step to improving your health and getting more information about yourself. Go to Lumen, that's spelled LUMEN.me/Megyn to get 20% off your Lumen. LUMEN.me/Megyn for 20% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Valerie, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is all so fascinating. And one of the most eye-opening things I read was about Alec Murdaugh's background. He comes from a long line of deeply ethically problematic people, which I did not know. All you ever heard about him was that he came from this very storied family. They were lifelong solicitors, or like the prosecutors in their town in South Carolina, very well respected. They controlled everything. It was far more nefarious than that. Can you take us back?
Oh, it absolutely was. I mean, I think one of the biggest surprises I had researching this book was that every crime that Alec was eventually convicted of had some echo in the past. And that includes like violence against women or overtures of violence against women. That includes insurance fraud, like by the side of the road, there was an act of insurance fraud that started the family dynasty, stealing from clients, drug trafficking. There were echoes in the past for every single crime we're talking about, even a boat wreck that caused really a traumatic injury. So that surprised me too. It wasn't just Alec. It was the history going back to 1920 of this family.
Yes. I mean, it really does show you, if you have a family, a father, a grandfather who are committing crimes and teaching you either explicitly or implicitly that that's okay, your odds of becoming a criminal are obviously much higher. But hello, women of the world, pay attention. Pay attention to your spouse, the guys you're dating. It can work the other way around too. And what they come from, who they come from. So his great grandfather, Randolph Murdaugh Sr., basically committed suicide and insurance fraud at the same time.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And I was in Hampton just last week. I actually was standing at the train tracks just south of Alameda, where the home place that Alec went the night of the homicides. His great-grandfather, Randolph Sr., was a very prominent man. I mean, every meal he ate was front page news. Like, where was he now? He was the district attorney for 4 counties in the Low Country of South Carolina. He was very sick. He was 53 years old. He was dying. He was at the end of his life. He had kidney failure at a time when there was no cure, right? There was no dialysis. He was broke. He had been a big investor in a bank, and then the bank failed. And through the Depression, I found documents down at the courthouse in Hampton where he just would say, there's no chance I can ever pay these people back. So he was broke, he was dying, and he knew how to do one thing incredibly well, which was sue the railroad, which at that time in 1940 was one of the only entities worth suing. So what happened was he was driving back from a poker game in Yemassee, a little town right on the Hampton County line, at 1 a.m, hottest day of the summer, 90-some degrees. He stops short of his home and turns onto a deserted train tracks and is at the base of it. And as the train is coming, and if you grew up in a small town near a railroad, you know what time the train comes through. The train is coming north, and you can hear it for miles. It's coming north. It's bearing down on this train tracks. He speeds up onto the tracks themselves, and they're blowing the whistle. They're flashing the light. It's a clear moonlit night. He sees them, and instead of like driving off, he waves at them. And what happens is there's a coroner's jury, and the coroner, of course, was a protege of Randolph Sr. The sheriff was a protege of Randolph Sr. There was an inquest the next morning, and guess what? The local coroner's jury found that in spite of the testimony of the engineer and others, it was an accident. And it cleared the way for Randolph Murdaugh Jr., Alec's grandfather, to sue the railroad for the equivalent of millions of dollars, which is what he did successfully.
Is Randolph Murdaugh Jr. Buster?
Randolph Murdaugh Jr. is Old Buster, and Old Buster was a real force to be reckoned with. He was solicitor from 1940, when he was 25 years old, to 1986. So Roosevelt to Reagan. And he even stayed in that office beyond that time. The legislature finally essentially forced him. They created a rule that essentially forced him to retire, but he kept going into the office as a volunteer solicitor. So Randolph Murdaugh Jr., Old Buster, Alec Murdaugh idolized him. He told many people that he wished he'd been born in Old Buster's day, because in those days, what you said was what the truth was. And Old Buster was, he ruled with an iron fist. He was one of those guys that would rather be feared than loved.
And he also continued fraud and potential violence against women.
Old Buster, I was able to pull 900 pages from the National Archives of the records from his trial, his federal trial. The feds charged him with bootlegging, actually running the largest bootlegging ring in the South. He was the ringleader. They charged 24 people. Old Buster, Alec's grandfather, was charged with leading this entire ring in Colleton County, and he was accused of taking a cash bribe in the hallway of the Colleton County Courthouse, which is the hallway that we went in and out every day of Alec's Murdaugh trial. He was accused of intimidating witnesses, buying off witnesses, and eventually of tampering with the jury by buying off the foreman. And he was one of the only people in that entire weeks-long federal trial that was acquitted. So there's a history of Alec Murdaugh was convicted of drug trafficking. His grandfather was credibly accused and narrowly escaped being convicted of bootlegging. Wow. So again, there's echoes in the past. Tell us about the mistress who got on the wrong side of Alec Murdaugh's grandfather. So there was testimony in Alec's trial, as you remember. There was testimony that Alec was somewhat of a philanderer, and that certainly is a history in the family going back generations. His grandfather, Old Buster, had a mistress, several, but one in particular who he was in touch with for many, many years, and her name was Ruth Fox. And Ruth Fox was married to a local, like a northern baron who came down and bought a plantation, and she was from one of the nation's first families, a really impressive woman in her own right. And she had been in the Navy during World War II, like training pilots, which is kind of wild to think about what kind of woman was doing that in the 40s. And she met Buster and asked for his help in getting out of her obligations. He's like, I know everybody. I'll know all U.S. senators. I'll help you get out of this bind. They got to know each other. And what you know, a year later, she is pregnant with his child. She goes to, it's just such an incredible story. She goes to the house, and we're talking about the same house that Alec went to the night of the homicides at Moselle. She goes to the house, knocks on the door, speaks to Alec's grandmother and says, you have a son, I have a son, these boys shouldn't eat. And the grandmother says, don't let my name come out of your mouth ever again, go away. And it was a stunning thing because she had survived essentially when she had told Old Buster that she was pregnant. He had tried to have her killed. He had a fixer, the story goes, he had a fixer of one of many who laid in wait underneath her porch one night and got a little bit too drunk and fell asleep and didn't kill her. So there was just like this incredible echoes throughout this story. Isn't it amazing? Yes, it is amazing. I mean, you must have been just slack-jawed when you read up about the direct line from which he came. And it makes sense of everything. So it didn't stop there. It didn't even skip a generation. Alec's father also had a history of paying people off to cover up a boat accident, which of course would set off Alec's own story with a different boat accident as well. Well, there was and there was certainly a terrible boat accident in 1998 from the same island, like Murdaugh Island, where you'll remember the tragic boat wreck that killed Mallory Beach in 2019. They took the Murdaugh family boat from the family compound, which is called Murdaugh Island. Back in 1998, Alec's younger brother was having a party on Murdaugh Island. There was a boat there, and it's incredible. I couldn't believe it when I saw the documents. It had been seized in a drug raid by the solicitor's office, so by Old Buster, and he liked the boat. So he kept it for his own use at the island, and the family used it. So it's late at night. There's some guests there that wanted to take the boat home rather than the roads because they didn't want to get in trouble. They've been drinking for many hours, and these young men set off on a boat ride home. And it's tricky. We know from what happened with the wreck that killed Mallory Beach. It's very shallow waters in places. They hit a shoal and stopped, and then immediately started back up and didn't realize that one of the guests had fallen overboard and had gotten run over by the motor and sustained a traumatic brain injury. And, I've got hundreds of pages of documents from the state that show the Murdaughs were involved in trying to make that wreck go away. Even some of the same DNR, the natural resources officers, even some of the same officers who were involved in the Mallory Beach wreck they were working that night as well. So the echoes in the past are sometimes I couldn't believe it. I really was gobsmacked many times in a row.
Yes, same. I'm having the same reaction just sitting here. So then, of course, we get to Alec, and this whole thing that we watched, this double murder trial in which he was found guilty of killing his wife and his own son, was set off by that boating accident, the second one, not the one you discussed where the woman was run over, but more recently with the younger generation, while Alec was out on a boat, was drinking, and they had an accident, and Mallory Beach was thrown from the boat and wasn't found for some time later, and she was dead. And that old Murdaugh instinct to cover it up, run cover for those involved, or especially for Alec, kicked in and would set off a chain of events that would ultimately destroy the Murdaugh family.
And it's so poignant to look at pictures of Mallory. She was 19 years old when she died. She was just full of life. I've gotten to know her family over the course of reporting this story. And it was Alec's boat, but it was his son, Paul Murdaugh, who was 19 at the time, who was driving. I mean, I think the facts established that he was driving. He was criminally charged with it. And so he is incredibly drunk. He drank a lot. I talked with people that knew the family. He had been sneaking beer since he was 8 years old, and at a certain point, not even sneaking them. So he was very, very drunk. He had 19 drinks that night. His BAC when he got to the hospital was 0.286. But he was a person, even at 19, who'd been drinking for numbers of years and had been driving drunk for numbers of years, according to people I talked to who were involved in wrecks with him before. But so he gets angry at his girlfriend, who's one of the passengers on the boat, confronts her. She says, "You're too drunk to drive. Give everybody the keys." Slaps her, spits in her face, goes back to the wheel of the boat and floors it. The equivalent of 28 miles an hour. And they're going through a very narrow, very shallow path, and it hit a bridge that fast, and Mallory is thrown overboard and never resurfaces. And what all the evidence, I've got thousands of pages of documents, some of them public, many of them many of them that had not been reviewed before, that just showed that when Alec got to the hospital that night where these young people had been on the boat he went room to room to room trying to get everyone on the same page. He had his grandfather, Old Buster's badge outside of his pocket, pretending to be a law enforcement officer. And I have his cell phone records and have tracked his path that night. Do you remember when he testified that he put blue lights and siren on the Suburban that he was driving?
Yes.
It was almost physically impossible for him to get from Moselle, where he and Maggie were living at the time, to the hospital unless he was going fabulously fast, 80 or 90 miles an hour. And I think it stands to reason, and I argue this in the book, that he almost certainly used lights to get to the hospital before the other families and get everyone on the same page. But it really was his undoing. The reason that he said he wanted to live in Old Buster's time is that, there was so much evidence in the video cameras in the hospital that night, so many statements, there was so much, everything is recorded, right? And he could not outrun modernity. And in the end, that night and his actions the night of the boat wreck really was the beginning of the end of the family.
For, among other reasons, he was then sued by the Beach family. And
Correct.
that in the course of that lawsuit, he would have to produce discovery speaking to his economic status, his financial data, and so on. And he was, we know separately now, running a massive fraud, stealing from his law firm, had a massive drug problem, or so he testified, and was very worried this was all going to come out. He would be exposed. And at the same time, his law firm, was this coincidental, Valerie, that the law firm started an investigation of Alec at the same time for possible ethical breaches, or were those two things related, the lawsuit and the law firm getting interested in him?
Well, it's all kind of woven together. And what happened in the immediate aftermath of the boat wreck is that Mallory's family was having a tough time finding a lawyer to represent their interest. And Renee Beach, Mallory's mom, tells the story of being down at the landing where the boat had come to rest, and wanting to go down there and see where her daughter was, where she was the last time she was spotted. And the police were very, very kind, but said, "I'm sorry, you can't go down there. Here's a case of water for you and your family while you wait." And there was a moment where Randolph Murdoch III, Alec's dad, and Maggie, his wife, came down in their pickup truck, and he waves at the officer and waves him through. And Renee Beach realized then, oh my gosh, this is not a vigil. I thought I was at a vigil mourning my daughter. This is a crime scene. And the family that's been the law in this area for 100 years is in charge of it. I need a lawyer. And she made a critical decision, which is to hire a lawyer to represent the family's interest. And that lawyer was a key player and a big character in this book. And his name is Mark Tinsley. And there's no enemy like your former friend. He was very close to Alec. He knew the playbook. He had a card key to get in and out of the Murdoch law firm at will. And he recognized those relationships. He's like, oh, I know he knows these particular officers because of my own personal information. And once he decided to take the Beaches case, he was relentless in showing that that Alec and potentially the officers who were involved in protecting the scene were really protecting Paul from charges. And so he filed a lawsuit in very short order. And that lawsuit sought, like you said, all of Alec's financial records. It's just a standard part of a civil lawsuit to say, how much insurance do you have? What resources could you potentially pay if there was a judgment? And Alec knew more than anyone else that he had been robbing his personal injury clients, the poorest of the poor, for more than a decade. And he knew what any serious inquiry would do. And so he had to stave that off. And in the end, it was his undoing.
So he killed his own wife and his son, Paul, who had been at the helm for that boating accident. And it was an attempt to garner sympathy, like to make him a sympathetic character so that his law firm would move away, would stop investigating him, so that the lawsuit involving Paul would be less strong because, the main culprit would be gone, and who would put this poor man now through the torture of seeing a civil lawsuit through. It was an effort to just change his own financial and reputational fortunes.
No, I think the prosecution argued that very effectively. And one of the things that I think that Mark Tinsley said on the stand is, personal injury lawyers don't think like other people. Their gift, their understanding of a successful one is understanding emotion. Like what might motivate a jury to pay blood money, and a lot of it in a case. They understand what makes people tick. And he knew that, the day of the homicides, June 7th of 2021, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, he had been confronted over some of that missing money that he had been stealing, $792,000, not a small amount. He knew that the law firm was on to him. And he knew also that his father was dying, the patriarch of this family, who had also loaned him $1 million over time, and who he had just been texting with his buddy at the bank. Oh, I'm going to get another loan from my dad for some money he was short. He knew his dad was dying. He knew this lawsuit was pending about his financials. He had been confronted over the missing money. And he also knew that Paul was a mess. I mean, sadly, and may he rest in peace, Paul's drunken actions did not cease with the boat wreck. There's testimony and that even just 10 days before he was killed, he was on a boat drinking, taking some people out, and he had to call his father to get out of it. So Paul's behavior was not de-escalating. If anything, his behavior is getting worse. So yes, I think that the state made a really effective argument that he needed to do something to become, instead of the object of suspicion, an object of sympathy. And what more would do that except becoming instead of somebody, a potential thief, a grieving father, a grieving husband, someone who was the victim of a horrible crime. And for months, he was right. It completely changed the subject.
And he had, prior to getting arrested, done what I guess it was his great-grandfather did, which was attempt to create a suicide situation that would lead to an insurance payout. I mean, now it's like kind of all connecting.
It's all connecting, and it really is extraordinary. So over the course of the summer of 2021, he did almost get away with the murder of Maggie and Paul. He really did. And he almost got away with the thefts that he's now admitted to, dozens and dozens of people, millions and millions of dollars, by, borrowing more money, borrowing money from his best friend, Chris Wilson, borrowing money from the bank, getting fronted money and trying to repay the $792,000 back to the law firm, which he did. And they kind of let it go until, and that goes in July and in August, until the Thursday before Labor Day weekend. His paralegal is in his office looking for some paperwork, which she knows he doesn't like, but she really needed it. She lifts up this folder, finds the check that was missing that proved that he had been stealing. So what happens then is the gig is up. Alec's confronted by his brother, his law partner, and many other law partners, and they say, "You've been stealing. We've got evidence you've been stealing from the firm. You have to go." So he gets fired that Friday of Labor Day weekend. And what happens the next morning? Saturday morning, he tries to fake his own death on the side of the road. And what he said was an insurance fraud attempt to get money for his surviving son, Buster. But what really looks like another way to change the subject, just like he had done back June 7th with the homicides of his wife and son. It really is stranger than fiction.
Did you know that homeowners in America, nationwide, they have over $32 trillion in equity? And cyber criminals are targeting it with a growing scam the FBI calls house stealing. House alarms, doorbell cameras, deadbolts will not work against these thieves because they're not after your stuff. They're after your equity. If your title's not being monitored, scammers can transfer the title of your home into their name and then take out loans against it or even sell it behind your back. The best way to protect your equity is with triple lock protection from Home Title Lock. Triple lock protection is 24/7 monitoring, and God forbid, if the worst happens, restoration services at no out-of-pocket cost to you. When was the last time you checked on your title? Likely never. And that's exactly what scammers are counting on. Make sure you're not already a victim. You can get a free title history report and a 30-day free trial of triple lock protection today by going to HometitleLock.com and using the promo code Megyn, or click on the link in the description. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code Megyn. HometitleLock.com. Grand Canyon University. It's a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, and they believe that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. By honoring your career calling, you can impact your family, friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or a doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 340 academic programs as of this past June, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. That's gcu.edu. Do we think he did not intend to die then when that guy who was next to homeless, I mean, that guy seemed, not like a sophisticated character, when he got him to, quote, shoot him, but it just grazed his head. Yeah. That was always so confusing to me. Like, was this some sort of a sharpshooter? How did the guy manage to actually barely connect with him to the point where it looked like he actually had been shot at, but not so much that he actually killed him?
Yeah. No, there are many theories about what happened actually at the side of the road, but the man you're talking about, Curtis Eddie Smith, will tell you, and he said it. He's like, if I'd shot him, he'd have been dead. So what he believes happened is there was a struggle over the gun. And he has said he thinks that Alec was trying to frame him, that they were struggling over the gun, and maybe Alec was going to, Alec was bigger. Alec is 6'4", 200 pounds. I mean, can he overpower this? And Curtis Eddie Smith is his cousin Eddie is a smaller guy. He's been out on disability for a number of years. Alec was his disability lawyer. and then frame him. And you remember when Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin, Ellick's lawyers, they said in court filings, they're like, the real killer is Eddie Smith. He was the one who killed Maggie and Paul. And so one of the theories is that Ellick may have been trying to kill Eddie and then say, see, he was coming after me to kill me the same way that he killed my wife and son. And it's strange. I don't know if you remember, but he was paying, Eddie was cashing a lot of checks for Ellick over a number of years. And the checks accelerated that summer, that hundreds of thousands of dollars that Ellick was effectively paying Eddie in a way. So was he going to say he was blackmailing me? Look at these payments. There are multiple ways to look at what actually happened there. But one of them is that if you look at the photos, and the defense released the photos. They signed a HIPAA release and released all the photos. There are people locally that say that's not a cut in his head. He fell, and that's the gravel on the side of the road that caused him to be cut. But one thing I should add about Cousin Eddie is that he's actually a cousin. I could not believe it. But if you go back more than 100 years to the Civil War, Ellick's great-great-grandfather, so Randolph Sr.'s father, was an officer in the Southern Army, and so was Eddie's great-great-grandfather, and they were brothers.
Wow.
His great-great-grandfather was named Lazarus Murdoch. He was what they call a fire eater, so he was an especially virulent he was anti-union. He made these incredible speeches that got picked up by national media and actually were read by Abraham Lincoln. So Eddie he says he's like, I'm half Murdoch, and he's right. He's part Murdoch.
Do we know, Valerie, do we ever figure out, and by the way, just for the audience, I'm talking today to Valerie Borline. She wrote the book, The Devil at His Elbow, Alex Murdoch and the Fall of a Southern Dynasty. Do we know where all the money went? This is one of the mysteries, right? It just seemed like Alec was taking in so much money via fraud from the law firm, the clients, and so on.
Yeah.
And where did it go? Like, it seemed like he claimed he just spent it on drugs, but the conclusion by many was always, how many drugs could he possibly have taken? He took in more than he could ever have spent, was the layperson conclusion on the funding.
No, and I think one of the key voices in the book is Blanca Simpson, who was the housekeeper at Moselle for many years. And I think the evidence establishes that Ellick was using drugs. But I think there's no evidence that he was using the amount of drugs and opioids in particular that he says he was. And I had the benefit of 10 years of spending. I could see through some federal exhibits, I could see what he and Maggie spent over the course of 10 years, down to like when they would go to the Honey Baked Ham store at Thanksgiving. You could see what that expenditure was. And what was so shocking about it, and I think we probably know people like this in our own lives, is as soon as money came in the door, it went out. He was overdrawn tens of thousands of dollars multiple times in a year. Maggie would have to call him and say, can you call the bank? I'm at the grocery store. I need to be able to cash this check and be able to pay for my groceries.
What was he spending it on?
It's extraordinary. It was, they would take a private plane to a USC bowl game instead of flying first class, or, Blanca told me, and there's farm equipment out on Moselle, which is 1,700 acres, a huge, huge property, twice the size of Central Park. And rather than fix, a big piece of heavy equipment, they would just put gallons of oil in it every day. So he was spending hundreds of dollars on oil. It was just, it's hard to even understand where the money was going. But there is missing money, millions of dollars, the feds say, that's still missing. So he spent a lot of it. He spent some of it on drugs. I do subscribe to the idea that he buried some of it at Moselle in PVC pipes. I've talked with people who've been there when those pipes had been dug up, but that you can't, cash is tough. It's tough to bury, millions of dollars in dirt over time. There is a theory, and I think the feds have been pursuing it, that some of the money is offshore. And was he going to run that summer is one of the ideas, but there's the feds say about $6 million that's still missing. So
that that makes more sense that we've got millions missing than that he spent it all on the drugs. All right, so then we go to trial. He does wind up arrested. This all comes out. Yeah. There is the moment he is found guilty. Actually, we have that. Let's just watch that. SOT 51.
The state of South Carolina, County of Colleton, in the Court of General Sessions, the July term of 2022. The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant. Indictment for murder, SC Code 16-3-0010, CDR Code 0116. Verdict, guilty. Signed by the forelady.
Okay, and that's interesting for a few reasons. One, he was found guilty. Two, old Becky Hill reading the verdict would come to play a major role in this story, which no one knew at the time. But Becky almost got this verdict thrown out because of her behavior behind the scenes with the jurors. And could it still, her behavior, get this verdict thrown out? Is that totally settled? I know that we had a hearing in which a different judge said, no, I'm not throwing out the verdict. But could that be reversed on appeal? I imagine Alex's lawyers are taking that up.
No, it's incredible to watch that footage. I was sitting there that night and I was leaning forward on the edge of my seat just listening to it because I remember that emotion. And all of the docket numbers were like, but what's the answer? So
right, spit it out.
So, but we had been in that courtroom. It's very tight corners. These soaring ceilings. It was designed in the 1820s, but very tight quarters. And we had been in there every day for 6 weeks. And by we, I mean the lawyers, the law enforcement officers, the jury, the Murdaughs. They were across the aisle from me. I could, exchange pleasantries every day. And so it was an extraordinary result to be there that night and listen to the verdict read by Becky. And Becky was really like the den mother of the courtroom because the clerk of court makes sure the jury has lunch, makes sure that the press has the credentials, or, there's so many people and downtown Walterboro didn't have places to eat. What about food trucks, which they ultimately brought in? She was sort of the principal of an elementary school is what it felt like a little bit. So it's surreal for Becky to be the center of so much scrutiny. But what that scrutiny is about is her relationships and potential talking out of school with members of the jury, many of whom she knew beforehand. And many of the jurors knew each other. It's a small town. I'm from a relatively small town myself in the South. And, if you had 100 people in church the day before jury selection, 5 of them would have gotten a jury summons. So, people knew each other and the jury wasn't sequestered. Everybody in town knew who they were. And Becky, knew a lot of them personally. And so the question was, did she talk to them out of school? And did she say things that would prejudice them against Alec, particularly when he took the stand?
And you had jurors come forward to say, yes, at least one of them said she influenced my verdict.
And it is a small town. And we talked a little bit about the bootlegging case involving Old Buster. It's extraordinary, but Becky's grandmother and grandfather and her uncle, who was a teenager, were federally charged with felonies in that bootlegging ring. They were on Buster's payroll.
Boy. And everything is connected.
Everything's connected there. But to your question, Megyn, I think that we did have a first answer. There was a hearing back in January where the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Jean Toll, was asked by her former colleagues on the Supreme Court to take a listen to this request for a new trial. She denied it, but the defense is appealing it back to the Supreme Court. They've agreed to hear it, even though it seems unlikely they will overturn their own the person that they trusted with this decision. And then also they're very close allies with Judge Newman, who presided over the initial proceeding. He's very tight with the Chief Justice, Don Beatty. So I spoke with Dick. I saw him recently in Columbia, Dick Harpootlian, and they see their best chance at a new trial at the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond, just a little bit further removed from South Carolina, which is such a small state. And getting fresh ears at this idea of not just did Becky Hill say things to the jurors that were prejudicial, but also did the state apply the wrong standard? And it was a degree it's a measure of degrees. Like, yes, we acknowledge that she talked with the jury, but did it did it move the needle? And so what they hope is that the federal court will apply a different standard.
Yeah, that they're going to argue they were held to too high a burden of proof to prove
Exactly.
jury tampering, and that a lower standard should have been applied, which would have allowed them to prove jury tampering, which would allow him to get a new trial. The Justice Toll was great when she came in and held that hearing over Becky Hill. The allegations against Becky Hill just got weirder.
Justice Toll,
weirder.
I will say, I'm sorry, she's just such an extraordinary figure in South Carolina history. I used to cover South Carolina politics when I was a reporter at the state newspaper in Columbia, and she was the Chief Justice at the time, former Speaker of the House. She's been in public life there for 60 years and was a young lawyer, and this is so extraordinary to me, was a young lawyer in a time when women weren't even allowed to serve on a jury until 1968. Wow. And so she was
did
talking to all male juries.
When she was up there, I say this lovingly, she seemed like a tough old broad in the best sense, like she wasn't going to tolerate any nonsense.
She would love to hear you say that. And she knew the Murdochs. She knew the Murdochs, and she had actually, both in the legislature, I talked with her about this, both in the legislature and on the bench, had pushed for laws that would kind of claw back some of the power that they were using, inappropriately, in her view. So she knew the Murdochs quite well over the course of decades.
She made the comment about Becky Hill that would become very well known. Here it is, SOT 52.
I find that the clerk of court is not completely credible as a witness. Ms. Hill was attracted by the siren call of celebrity. She wanted to write a book about the trial and expressed that as early as November 2022, long before the trial began.
And that led to bad behavior by Becky Hill, which got this whole thing, mucked up. But do you remember, it's been a while since we've covered this, but she also has a son who worked in the courthouse. And there was an allegation about him wiping his phone and wiping her phone on the day that they were supposed to turn them over for an internal ethics investigation. It smelled to high heaven.
It is, I think it's, if you're not from a small town in the rural South, maybe it boggles the mind, but her son was the information technology director for the county. And that was, she's an elected official. She is, but she's also, politically powerful. And some of those jobs are patronage jobs. And he was in that role and is, accused of tapping the phone of an eminent county administrator that was communicating with the state ethics board to try to find out what was going on in the investigation with his mother. There were all sorts of wiping the phone, which, the lawyers will tell you is a fairly standard move in some defense cases, but it looked highly irregular to a layperson. Yeah, it's funny because it's such a big case. It captivated so much attention that the center ring of the circus is really Alec Murdaugh in the trial, but there's so many outer rings. With the Mallory Beach case, for example, there's another case that's ongoing about whether the convenience store where Paul bought beer, whether the owner of that convenience store has been trying to harass the Beach family over the years. That's been going on for several years. Becky is facing an investigation into her behavior, and that's been going on. So we're in multiple layers of drama with this story, and it's just incredible. Like the layers, I remember sitting in court and watching Alec during a break. He was, 6 feet away from me. And he's the center of this, he's the eye of this hurricane, and there's so much swirling around him that one person could stir up so much chaos is really amazing.
So now here we are where he's appealing. He's going to argue Becky Hill mucked up the trial to the point where he gets another trial. We don't love the chances, but one never knows. And in the meantime, the wrongful death lawsuit that Mallory Beach's family brought against Alec, is that totally resolved?
That was the remnants of that were resolved this week with a $500,000 payment from Alec's insurer that had been tied up, and that was paid to the lawyers the paper was filed this past Monday. So that case is pretty well wrapped up.
Did the family get a payment too?
The family did. Not this past summer, but summer of 23, they received a payment largely from Parker's convenience store, this convenience store where Paul bought beer, on the order of $14 million. So it was a significant civil judgment that, and I learned a lot about personal injury law in the course of reporting this book. But, this was considered, what was Mallory's life worth? It is blood money. And so it's a difficult fact of personal injury law that the more money that you get paid is a reflection of what, a jury might think your loved one's life is worth.
I'm sure it's a special form of sentencing for you, because every time you get into the car that money bought or the bed that money paid for, it's got to make you feel awful.
And they will tell you, and they will tell you, Mrs. Pamela Pinckney, Hakeem Pinckney's mother. Hakeem was the paraplegic teenager who died in a nursing home and was robbed by Alec Murdaugh twice. She would tell you she would give back all of it for time with her son. It's the proxy we have in our judicial system to make a family as whole as possible, knowing that nothing really ever will.
So what, if anything, is happening with the other piece of this story, which is the possible murder?
There's only one other piece.
By Buster, Paul's older brother, of a young gay classmate who was killed on the road, but there's just only speculation that it was Buster Murdaugh, not actual proof, and they were going to reopen that investigation in the wake of all of this. Where does that stand?
Well, you mentioned the missing money. There's also the question of the missing guns and the homicide. But the biggest unanswered question is what happened to Stephen Smith. He was the 19-year-old young man who was found in the middle of a road in the summer of 2015. In the course of the investigation, the Murdaugh name came up 40 different times. People would say one of the boys or another was involved somehow. But I should be clear, there is no evidence that Buster or Paul, there's no proof that either one of them had anything to do with the death of this young man. Buster has gone so far to say, that he had nothing to do with it. He wasn't close to it. He wasn't there that evening. And he's even sued some of the documentary filmmakers who he alleges have said that he had a role in some way, shape, or form.
They certainly have laid those breadcrumbs.
But it is, you can go through it's 90 some pages of a police report where the name comes up over and over again in very strange ways. So there's always been a rumor that the Murdaughs were involved somehow in his death or in making it impossible to find out who killed him. But I can tell you that the state grand jury has still been meeting over this case and is eager to figure it out. It is one that it still haunts Hampton County. So we may never know, but it won't be for lack of interviews and lack of trying, because they're actively working the case, from what I understand.
So in the time we have left, what life like right now for Buster Murdaugh, the son whose entire family has been killed or is now in jail, and for Alec Murdaugh, who is living this life of excess and now is convicted of double homicide, not to mention all the fraud charges that were brought against him separately, which he was also found guilty on.
No, it's very poignant. I mentioned I was in Hampton last week and went by the cemetery, and I saw it took a while, but Maggie and Paul's gravestones have been put up, and people will leave flowers there. There's a ceramic dog that looks like Bubba, the yellow lab that belonged to the family, that's there. And most poignant of all, it's on Maggie's headstone it says Margaret Branstetter Murdaugh, mother. And on Paul's, it says Paul Terry Murdaugh, son. And it's incredible that is how you be defined. But the person I was with said, what happens to Alec? Where is he in this picture? So will he be remembered as a father? Will he be remembered as the person that killed them? But he's in prison in the upstate. He has acclimated to prison life well, according to what I'm told. And by that, I mean he has Alec Murdaugh is the type of a person who works the system, and he has relationships. He's a disbarred lawyer, but he knows the law, and he helps other inmates with their questions. He's using his notoriety to his benefit. He was, accused by, or the prisons system of prisons found that he had been, essentially bribing other inmates to let him use their PIN number to make phone calls. He's figuring things out on the inside, but he will never, ever see the light of day, even if there's another trial in the homicide case. The state has effectively got an insurance policy. You remember back in November when he pled guilty to those dozens of financial crimes, and they got a sentence that will keep him in prison until he's roughly 80 years old. So regardless of whether the homicide is overturned. As for Buster, my understanding is, he's living in Bluffton, the community just, adjacent to Beaufort, with his fiance is a woman who was in court with him every day, his girlfriend from law school, who is a lawyer. He got a substantial settlement from his mother's estate, roughly $500,000. There's a payment I document in the book where he participated in a documentary and got several $100,000 from that. So he has a small amount, not a small, but a significant amount of money to start a life, although it is difficult to see how he does so separate from his family, because his last name's Murdaugh and he's got that red hair. He's so it would be hard with that name and that hair to make a new life.
You'd have to go someplace else. I mean, there's a brother, Alec's brother, seemed non-sociopathic. Perhaps there's some hope there. I don't know. Raised by that man with that family lineage. That's
well, and you're right about his brothers. His older brother Randy and his younger brother John Marvin are still in the community as well. I went by the law firm the other day, and his older brother Randy is a partner there and is actively working cases. His younger brother John Marvin runs a heavy equipment business, and as you go down the main drag from linking Hampton and Varnville, you see Murdaugh Rentals right there. So they're still in the community and well regarded to a degree. But I think that everything's changed with the downfall.
Is anyone living at the estate where it happened?
So Moselle is the estate where it happened. It actually has been sold, and it's been sold in two pieces. The house itself was sold along with roughly 20 acres to an out-of-state buyer whose name was not revealed. And the Delta, the other acreage, was sold to a neighboring landowner who wanted the land. It is. I went by there the other day too, just to take a look. I had been onto the property during the trial. I accompanied the jury on their visit to see the place. It still feels. It still seems like there's a heaviness in the air out there. It is still a haunted place, really. Dick Harpootlian said so, and I felt it as well.
Always will be. Wow, great reporting, Valerie. Thank you. Her name is Valerie Borline, and the book again is "The Devil at His Elbow: Alec Murdaugh and the Fall of a Southern Dynasty." Google it, check it out. Devil at His Elbow. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us the story and the updates.
Thank you so much for having me.
All the best. You know how much my family and I love our dogs, right? Yes, even my Strudwick, who once again got into Yardley's backpack this morning. Can't even imagine life without them, without the good version of them. They have a great life, but some dogs are not so lucky. And this is why I'm so glad to tell you about Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They have rescued thousands of dogs, plus cats and horses too. They provide all their animals with shelter, safety, and most of all, love. And they've been doing it for more than 45 years now. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open, and giving can bring tax benefits too. Speak with your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping animals in need. And check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more. We love our Thunder and Strudwick, but would like for other dogs who need love to find it too. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. now these families in Israel, many of whom have lost someone in this attack on 10/7 or who know a family that's lost somebody. I mean, it's a very close, small country. Now they have their sons going off or their daughters going off, like in at very real risk of peril and loss of life in what is going to look more like Fallujah if they start this ground invasion. You know, I mean, it's going to be hand-to-hand urban warfare that was tough even for our best and most grizzled soldiers, Bethany.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just their sons and daughters, it's their husbands. I mean, I'm just going to give you one example. My friend Gabe is my age. I'm 37 years old. He has 3 children and his wife is a photographer and he works in marketing. He's on the front lines right now and it's really scary. I was just getting voice memos for him. So when you think about the Israeli, nation and the economy, everything has ground to a halt because every single man is pretty much in a uniform right now. And so the offices are empty. The restaurants aren't doing delivery. Like it is all hands on deck right now in Israel. And the people, I mean, no one wants to be doing this. No one wants to take off. And, my friends are doing FaceTime calls with their husbands. And, there was a beautiful one of a soldier who was naming his baby at his bris on FaceTime because he couldn't be at his son's bris. There are weddings happening before people are deployed. I mean, the Israeli public do not want to be doing this, but they need to. They understand that they need to because Hamas is an existential threat to everyone's safety. And they're holding 200 Israelis hostage, women, children, babies. There's a 9-month-old that no one knows what's going on. And I want everyone to just stop for a moment and think that there are 200 people, women and children, who are in the hands of Hamas. And listen back to that first 5 minutes of your show and remember what they did to people before they killed them. Those demons have 200 people for the last 13 days. What is happening to them? I don't even want to imagine. And that is why this is a crisis and why everyone has responded, because it is a country the size of New Jersey. Everyone knows someone who is dead or missing, and they understand it could be them, it could be their children, and they have to get them back right now.
I mean, just the horrors of murdering women and then posting the murders on the Facebook pages and then sending the message
cutting women open and stabbing their fetuses. Like it's beyond horrific. It's the worst stuff. You couldn't even conjure it up. It's Nazi level cruelty, torture, and inhumanity. 100%. I mean, some of this stuff the Nazis didn't even think of. So I don't understand these people even as human. I really don't. You could say I'm trying to dehumanize them. I would say they did it to themselves. So what do we make then, Carol, of this 100 million? Because we're going to give it, I mean, truly, as I said in the intro, okay, so he's got a finger wagging. You better not let Hamas have any of this 100 million. This is for aid for the innocent Palestinians who are there. And there are some innocents. But, you better make sure that Hamas does it. If Hamas gets it, you're in a lot of trouble. I can see why the families of the hostages are saying, what about them? Why weren't they even discussed? Maybe something was happening behind the scenes.
Maybe it was. I find it very hard to trust the Joe Biden administration. He goes to Israel and he jokes that the Palestinians need to learn how to shoot straight. And that 100 million
that was
Palestinian
unbelievable.
Civilians is absolutely going to be stolen by Hamas. Hamas has posted videos of them removing water pipes and turning it into rocket launchers. It's not us or any, Western or anybody saying this. It's themselves posting this online and showing their work. And yet we're giving them $100 million to just do more of this. I really feel like I'm on glue with this. It's such a crazy thing for America and Israel to do. And I don't believe that President Biden even once mentioned the hostages. And there's, I think, 17 Americans being held of that 200. Hasn't said a word about them while he was in Israel. I don't know what his speech tonight is going to be, but I have just very low expectations for this administration, and they don't even clear that expectation generally.
Yeah, I think he made a passing reference. And then later when he was asked, what's going to happen with the hostages, he said, I'm hopeful that we can get them back. So it's possible we have something. There was speculation that, and I think a Hamas leader had suggested they were going to release all the civilian hostages just as long as Israel stopped bombing. So Israel needs to stop in its retaliation. it's exacting of justice and securing of its own safety, and then it can have back just the hostages. That'll be the deal. So which Israel's never going to agree to. And then there was some speculation that perhaps Joe Biden had struck a deal, or Blinken had struck a deal for the release at least of the Americans, and he was going to go over there and meet with the Arabs and say, see, look, I've gotten the Americans back. Because I do think Hamas knows if you kill the Americans, you start putting out those little videos that you promised of murdering Americans on TV, it's a different ballgame. It's a fucking different ballgame.
I don't know. I really do hope so. And the thing is, look, I'm a conservative. I didn't vote for Joe Biden, but of course I'm rooting for him. Of course I'm rooting for him to do the right thing and say the right words and have action that brings home these Americans being held hostage. But I just don't see that. I feel like if I'm wrong, I'll be so happy to be wrong. I would love to see this administration step up and show some strength and really get those Americans out of there and do the right thing. But I see chaos.
This show is supported by Grand Canyon University. Founded in 1949, GCU is a private Christian university that's dedicated to delivering an affordable and transformative higher education. Their vibrant campus is located in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, and according to niche.com, it's ranked a top 25 best campus in the country. As of June 2023, GCU offers 330 academic programs, 330 I say, and over 270 of those are available also online, allowing you the freedom to earn your degree on your time from wherever you are. You can fold it into your day where it makes sense. Their programs are also designed to challenge and inspire you. At GCU, your degree, whether it's a bachelor's, master's, or doctorate, integrates the free market system and a welcoming Christian worldview. Learn more about GCU's programs, competitive tuition rates, and scholarship offers from your university counselor. They're part of the supportive graduation team who take a personalized approach to helping you achieve your academic goals, walking alongside you every step of the way. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. For more info or to enroll, visit gcu.edu. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.